Chapter 21-26. Aunt 11 didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How can that be the same? As long as you flap your wings, people will know that you are a fake bird. Lu Xiaoyi shook his head. You don't know, do you? Too bureaucratic. In these 100 years, I don't know how many times I and Han Yan have flown. Without boasting or using escape techniques, I just rely on my wings to move. Han Yan can't even touch a single feather of mine. It's just that the phoenix feathers are too rare. It's not something that can be faked. Aunt 11 was speechless. This little guy's eyesight was very accurate. He had seen through their concerns. As the kings of 10,000 beasts, it was not good for them to be too close to humans. In this chaotic era, they would set a very bad example for the immemorial beasts and demonic beasts below. This was why they were hesitant. All right, I'll try to ask. On the parasol tree, other than me and Han Yan, who else is willing to pluck your feathers? We can't pluck too many phoenix feathers. The two of us can't make up your entire body. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoyi, who had always been sweet and well-behaved, obtained the support of the phoenixes. In fact, it was also helping themselves. According to the previous situation, every time a fragment of the Great Tao collapsed, there would be more than 10 half-immortals from various orthodoxies gathered in the road of no return. As the management of the inner and outer scenic sky became more and more lax, there were more and more half-immortals in the lower realm. In addition, this time, 4 fragments of the Great Tao collapsed at once. It was certain that the number of human half-immortals would be close to 50. This was not something that could be maintained by a few phoenixes. The phoenixes were the kings of 10,000 beasts, not only because they were few in number and extremely powerful, but also because of their innate divine ability, disdain. This was the kind of pressure that only worked among the beasts. This ability made them invincible among the beasts, and no beast could stand in their way. However, when confronting humans, disdain was useless. Therefore, the difference in strength was not as great as when facing a group of beasts. Although their ability was still above the human half-immortals of the same realm, it was more limited. They could deal with 2 or 3 at the same time without any problem. If there were more, they might not be able to move freely. Among the phoenixes on the Wudong tree, 2nd ant, 5th ant, 9th ant, and 11th ant were the strongest. They were all in the half-immortal realm. There were also a few other phoenixes, all of them at the true monarch realm. There was even a little Yuanying phoenix like Han Yan. Phoenixes possessed endless lifespan, powerful mystical powers, and exceptional strength, but in the upper realm, they couldn't avoid the common problem of archaic beasts. They were too slow. The higher their strength, the more this was the case. Based on this calculation, even if the 4 great phoenixes went, they would still be too weak to deal with the 50 human half-immortals. As long as everyone obeyed the rules and didn't cross the line, it would still be fine. However, once they started fighting because of something, the phoenixes would be unable to cope with it. Now that the end of the epoch was approaching, the pressure on the cultivators would increase, and their behavior would become more extreme. It was unlikely that they would be able to complete the fight for the fragments peacefully. This was the reason why the phoenixes invited Lu Xiaoyi to participate. He was strong, had a close relationship, and was only one person. It would be very difficult for others to realize that he was the external aid that the phoenixes had invited. Every proud race loved face. Inviting an outsider meant admitting that they were not good enough. This was something that the phoenixes couldn't tolerate. Therefore, when he opened his mouth and asked for feathers, everyone cooperated and discussed with each other. You pluck the feathers from the left wing, I plucked the feathers from the right wing, some plucked the feathers from the belly, some plucked the feathers from the back, some plucked the feathers from the head, and some plucked the feathers from the tail. In any case, the 9 phoenixes managed to gather a complete set for him. This was the first time in the phoenixes' several million years of history that something like this had happened. There was no other reason. They didn't treat Lu Xiaoyi as an outsider. In any case, he could be considered as half a son-in-law. Han Yen was responsible for giving him the feathers. However, before she touched the feathers, he needed to transform a little. Transforming was also a very important aspect of a cultivator's ability. Lu Xiaoyi even considered whether this thing could possibly become an innate great Tao in the future. The Tao of transformation was easy for a half-immortal, but it was also very difficult. It all depended on how you transformed. If you were similar in form but not in spirit, then Lu Xiaoyi could also transform into all things. However, no matter what he transformed into, he couldn't break away from the swordsman's essence. Even if he transformed into a rabbit, it would be a rabbit that could spit out flying swords. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, he would be exposed. The true transformation was to transform into anything. Not only did it have to be similar in form, it also had to be similar in spirit. For example, if he transformed into a phoenix, not only did he have to have the same appearance, he also had to know their innate divine ability, disdain. This was very difficult. Lu Xiaoyi couldn't do it. In fact, he hadn't seen any other half-immortal who could do it. The reason was actually very simple. Humans were the leader of all living beings. Their cultivation, combat skills, habits, and characteristics were all based on their stinky skin. No matter what they turned into, they could only turn into something lower. That would be meaningless. They would put themselves in danger for no reason, and the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, although the Tao of transformation was very high-end, very few people practiced it. Only those immortals who had successfully ascended to immortality had a lot of time to study this great Tao. For the cultivators of the origin world, they first had to consider the problem of how to reach the upper realm. They didn't want to transform into a bird, a wild boar, or a tiger. It wasn't like they were in a circus. This was also the reason why Lu Xiaoyi asked for the phoenix feathers. In the Tao of transformation, the higher the level of the beast, the harder it was to transform. It was easy to transform into a snake or a beast, but if you wanted to transform into a phoenix, you wouldn't even be able to transform into a phoenix's feathers, let alone the phoenix's divine ability. Lu Xiaoyi could only first transform into an appearance that was 70 or 80% similar to the phoenix, and then let the little phoenix correct him. Little E, you look like a phoenix, but you don't know the phoenix's skills. Once you open your mouth and spit out a sword pill, everything will be exposed. What's the point? The little phoenix complained that he was overestimating himself. Lu Xiaoyi sneered, "The feathers are long, but your knowledge is short, right? Why would I open my mouth and spit out a sword pill? I can shoot out swords from all over my body. I can shoot them from my anus, and they're even poisonous. I can use all of your phoenix's feather-flinging attack. I'm just using a flying sword to simulate the shooting of feathers. What's so difficult about that? In the worst case, I can still get close. Although I don't have a long sword, I still have claws. A swordsman at my level, my swordsmanship has long broken through the limits of having a sword or not. Even if I use my tongue, do you believe that I can use swordsmanship?" The little phoenix curled its lips. Believe. You're just bragging, right? You were able to do it when you built your foundation. Isn't this your talent? It circled around Lu Xiaoyi 3 times, guiding him on where he should be thinner and where he should be fatter. The phoenix's feathers were very dense, and Lu Xiaoyi had never seen a white-cut phoenix, so the details were not satisfactory. For example, how long should the neck be stretched to match the body? The claws were too long, they needed to be retracted a little. The details of the buttocks? The tail cone, there were countless small problems. Finally, the little phoenix's face turned red. "Lu Xiaoyi, can't you retract that thing? Do you think it looks good just like that?" Chapter 21-27. Lu Xiaoyi was also very helpless. "That place is my weak spot. It can't be changed. Usually, it can only become bigger or smaller, but it can't disappear." The little phoenix was fuming, but she was quite familiar with this thing. After all, they had been husband and wife for a long time. It's too ugly. Do you want to chop it off? You can grow it back after we're done? Lu Xiaoyi was shocked. Even if it doesn't work, it's still my little ancestor. Heads can be broken and blood can flow, but a man can't lose his dignity. How about we put some glue on it first? The little phoenix muttered and was very dissatisfied with helping him deal with these small details. Lu Xiaoyi was still not at ease and instructed, stick it firmly. Flying will be very intense during the battle. Don't open the glue and throw it out. I'm a flying sword cultivator, not a staff cultivator. The little phoenix was very meticulous and very careful. Her feathers were fixed firmly one by one, afraid that during the battle, the astral wind would wreak havoc and cause her feathers to fall off. However, this was not a problem. During the battle, with the astral wind protecting his body and conscious control, how could Lu Xiaoyi lose a single strand of hair with his ability? It was just flirting. They spent an entire day like this. When Lu Xiaoyi and the little phoenix flew to the front of the few big phoenixes, they did not dare to believe it. Not only the appearance, but the flapping of the wings was very elegant and extraordinary. A feeling of a sovereign descending to the world spontaneously arose. Feeling everyone's surprise, Lu Xiaoyi was very proud. In his Naiwan Sparrow Palace, he had seen this thing flapping its wings for thousands of years. How could he not learn this rhythm? Aunt 11 was very satisfied. With this guy here, they could fight against 1,000,000 soldiers. She instructed, you all look after the parasol tree. If there are any accidents, just leave. There's nothing to fight about. Everything will wait for us to come back. The little phoenixes nodded in agreement. A group of 5 phoenixes, 4 real and 1 fake, disappeared without a trace. Among the 5 phoenixes, Aunt 11 and Sun Ernyang were both peak half-immortal. Hu Jinyang, Wei Wunyang, and Lu Xiaonyang were all first-step half-immortal. This lineup could not be said to be weak, but Aunt 11 was still very cautious. Little E. Do not underestimate those half-immortals who have come to the point of no return. These were the true elites of the orthodoxies. They were the supreme seeds that the sects had high hopes for. They were the tides that would change the epoch in the future. Behind them were the most powerful forces in the universe, with the longest inheritances and the deepest foundations of orthodoxies. As far as they were concerned, their ancient techniques were definitely at Severance 1 or 2, and their blight realms were definitely at 4th or 5th blight. Therefore, they couldn't be careless. Even if we were to fight against them, it wouldn't be like what the rumors say. At most, it would be 1 against 2. The reason they were able to control the situation in the past was because they didn't want to provoke the disgust of the primeval beast clan, so they had some misgivings in their hearts. However, no one can guarantee that they will continue to restrain themselves like this. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. I understand. If I can persuade him, I will. If I can, I will. I won't use force unless I have no other choice. Aunt 11 was very satisfied. At least in terms of attitude, this little guy was very modest. She was afraid that he would reveal his true colors once they started fighting. Because we don't participate in the fight for fragments, the human half-immortals know that we are only the guardians of order. What we care about is the safety of the point of no return, and whether or not they will affect the operation of the point of no return when they use their technique. Therefore, at least in the beginning, no one will take the initiative to make an enemy out of us. Little E, you also need fragments. I won't stop you, but you have to do it secretly. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. Don't worry, we are all veterans. We know what to do. I guarantee that we will do it secretly. If we take something, we will have to throw the blame out. Aunt 11 tried her best to give him a general impression. In the point of no return, the risk was not small. Phoenixes could be reborn from the ashes, but Lu Xiaoyi's rebirth could be broken by others. Usually, in a fight for fragments like this, it will develop into a confrontation between various groups. There are groups like the Taoist and Buddhist circles, the 4 symbols of the universe, the inner and outer scenic circles, and so on. We don't have to be anxious. We can offend one group, but never fight against everyone. That is not our purpose here. Aunt 11 was a little naggy, but Lu Xiaoyi just listened quietly and did not show any impatience. She only nagged because she cared about you. Otherwise, she would not say a word and let you comprehend and die. At his level, there were not many opportunities to listen to others nagging. Every time the fragments in the point of no return are divided, there will be leftovers. This place is very strange. When fewer cultivators enter, these fragments will hide without a trace. When more cultivators enter and new fragments enter, they will come out to join in the fun. Therefore, little e, you actually have a chance to encounter a nirvana fragment here. It all depends on your luck. I didn't say it before because I knew it would be useless even if you went in. Looking for it alone is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But now that there are new fragments, a group of cultivators entering is the best chance. Lu Xiaoyi expressed his gratitude. He was still a step away from nirvana and the five fates. He still needed fragments to improve, but this process would not be long. When he gathered all 24 great Daos, the universe would enter the later stage of chaos. With his vast understanding of the great Daos, he would not need fragments to help him understand the remaining 12 great Daos. Now it was the final hurdle. After this period, he would not have to worry about understanding the great Daos anymore. Sun Ernyang's attention was on other things. Little e, don't keep the tip of your claws extended. It is the habit of the phoenix race, and actually the habit of all birds, to keep it normally and only pop it out when needed. Hu Junyang also said, Little e, your movement of flapping your wings is perfect. Even we can't find anything wrong with it. But you have to wave your tail a little. Don't be so stiff and timid. Wei Wunyang said, Little e, the phoenix's head must always be held high. This is our pride. You did well, but you have to pay attention to the angle. If you wave it too high, it will look like you have a stiff pillow. Also, the phoenix's supernatural power is disdainful. Disdainful means intimidating. If your gaze is not intimidating, then it is filled with ferocity. Under the guidance of a few large phoenixes, Lu Xiaoyi finally adjusted his state. His claws were easy to handle. He just had to keep them. Intimidating was not easy, because in his nearly 3,000 years of cultivation, he either had a wretched smile, a ferocious look, a lustful look, or a fake smile. But there were times when he did not have an intimidating aura. Even in his short career as a sect leader, he did not cultivate such an aura. Forget it. Intimidating is intimidating. It's better than being cheap. Just Aunt 11 sighed. How could a person's temperament be changed so easily? But the most difficult part was how to shake his butt. Either he shook it too much or it was too mechanical. It did not have the charm to match his wings. He could not be blamed. In the Sparrow Palace, he only saw wings. Where did he see a butt? The more he twisted it, the uglier it looked. He might as well not twist it. In the end, even the strict Hu Junyang had to give up. Forget it. You should just pretend to be paralyzed. At least it will look more natural. Chapter 21-28. The Phoenix Nest was very close to the road of no return. Actually, Lu Xiaoyi didn't need to lead the way as he already knew where to go. He just needed to fly to the coldest place, which was the air conditioner. The temperature here was close to the extreme, more than negative 300 degrees Celsius. However, because of the phoenix feathers on his body, he didn't feel it that strongly. To a demi-immortal, such an extreme environment only stimulated them to circulate the elemental energy in their body. The 5 phoenixes rushed into the road of no return. Lu Xiaoyi immediately felt that there was something different about this place. The temperature was no longer that low, but there was an unknown liquid mist coming at them at an extremely high speed. This liquid mist would expand rapidly after rushing out of the road of no return, taking away the heat and creating coldness. They were going against the current. There were no traces of humans here. Aunt 11 had already reminded him that human cultivators would usually enter from the other side of the wormhole. Both sides would only come into contact with each other at the center of the wormhole. That was also the place where the fragments of the Great Path were most likely to be concentrated. These Great Path fairies also seemed to like to join in the fun. They wouldn't appear alone, but they preferred to move in groups. In the void of the universe outside, they didn't have the chance to meet each other, but it was different here. Aunt 11 and son Earnyang flew at the front, while he hid behind them and poked his head out to look around. According to the rules that were agreed upon beforehand, when the human demi-immortal cultivators had a dispute, Aunt 11 would come forward to resolve it. He couldn't interrupt. This was a necessary precaution. Otherwise, with his stinky mouth, he wouldn't be able to say a few words and he would be full of hatred. Lu Xiaoyi didn't care. He was more concerned about the environment here. Although it was called a wormhole, it was relative to the void of the universe. To humans, it wasn't a wormhole. It was an extremely wide space corridor, enough for fighting and moving. This place was a fiery nebula. The burning nebula was a very common celestial phenomenon in the void of the universe. It was usually seen within a certain distance from a star. Because it was burned by the star all year round and was pulled by the star's huge gravitational force, it formed such a nebula phenomenon. It would burn through the nebula and burn it into particles before being sucked back to the star's surface. It was a predestined result. It was only a matter of time. In the fiery nebula, the temperature could easily reach a few hundred degrees. Cultivators whose realms were not high enough had to stay away. Yuanying did not dare to come in, and even Jinjuan had to be extra careful. Only the half-immortal body could go in and out freely. It was because they had completely grasped the Tao state, not because their bodies were resistant. However, the fiery nebula was different. There were no stars around it that could generate enough heat. The nearest stellar giant was very far away, and its heat was almost undetectable to humans. The burning nebula here was caused by something else. The temperature was not as high as the normal burning nebula, either. It was a weakened version of the celestial phenomenon, but it was still a forbidden land for human cultivators and cultivators. No one was willing to come in casually, because spiritual opportunity would not even be generated here. However, the strange thing was that in this burning nebula, there were many figures of cultivators moving about. There were dozens of them, and it was as if they were holding a ceremony inside, moving about randomly. There were 3 figures, traveling together, and one of them was complaining. From the looks of it, we've come to the right place. But there are a little too many people. Moreover, most of them are old monsters at the 4th, 5th, and 2nd severance. Ma Bailu, look at the place you've led us to. They don't even use coffins, and directly cremate them. That's quite convenient. Another voice said, I didn't beg you to come, either. I only secretly told Senior Sister because we're all in the 5th ring, and it's not good to eat alone. Senior Sister is kind-hearted, and can't bear to drag you in, but you're still complaining here. If you're afraid of death, then hurry up and leave. There's still time now. The 5th ring Supreme Mountain Gate is the safest. Dig a deep hole and bury yourself in it. The last was a female voice, and she was very impatient. All right, are you done yet? I've been listening to you two the whole way, so annoying. There are many seniors here, and we can't be rash. However, we're not to be trifled with, either. If we really get into a conflict, who's afraid of whom? It's a pity that little E isn't here. Otherwise, we might as well take over the entire 5th ring. These 3 people were the 3 half-immortals from the 5th ring, Qing Xian, Shi Shi, and Yan Qing. After several hundred years, they each had their own fortuitous encounters. They were the most outstanding seeds of this era, so it was natural for them to reach the upper level. Now, Shi Shi and Yan Qing had both successfully reached the upper level of Yang spirit. Qing Xian was the strangest. His Yang spirit could not advance, But like the bamboo hat he held high, he became a second severance primordial spirit. The three of them each had their own gains, and had successfully taken a step forward on the great path. Naturally, like Lu Xiaoyi, they began to consider the problem of creating a new great Tao. They were not the only ones. This was a problem that almost every half-immortal had to consider. The higher one's ambition, the greater their achievements. If you didn't even dare to think about it, how could you become an immortal? If you wanted to create a new great Tao, you had to be well versed in the concept of the great Tao. You couldn't say that you were proficient in it, but at the very least, you had to have a basic understanding of it. This was because the new great Tao was also built on the original 36 innate great Taos, and had completely covered all aspects of cultivation. It was just that, in the new era, there would be a new great Tao that was more compatible with the new era. This time, the collapse of the Four Fates was a good opportunity to capture a fragment of the great Tao. The three pure ones indeed had a deep foundation. The details of the road of no return were not a secret to the three pure ones of the fifth ring. Of course, as one of the seeds of the orthodoxy, Qing Xian had the right to come and fight for it. He was not one to eat alone, and he also understood that in this era, he could not bear all the responsibility alone. Since Lu Xiaoyi could not find it, he could only inform his senior sister, Yan Qing. For him, there was no such thing as danger. Everyone had reached this level, so there was no need to differentiate between men and women, who needed someone to take care of them. As a result, the 3 5-ring half-celestial realm cultivators gathered together. Originally, they thought that with their strength, they would be able to do whatever they wanted in this place. However, when they entered the Fire Nebula, they discovered that not only were there more people than they had imagined, but they were also stronger than they had imagined. How could the three of them be people who would retreat? Some complaints were just the way they got along. If that stick was there, then it would be the loudest complaint. However, this did not affect their determination to go in. "Can't we go in now?" Among the three of them, Yan Qing actually knew the least about this. This was the fundamental difference between the sword vein and the Dharma vein. It was not completely because she was ignorant. She explained, "Senior sister, don't worry. The fragments of the great Tao have collapsed, and it will take time to fly here. The more time we wait, the more fragments of the great Tao will go in. It will be easier to divide them. Otherwise, with these people, sooner or later, their brains will be beaten to a pulp. Now that more people have gone in, the fragments of the great Tao will not go in. They are very spiritual. So you see, these old monsters are hanging around outside and not going in. This is the reason. It is not good for us to take the lead, so we should just follow behind them. Otherwise, they will think that we do not know the rules and attack us." He knew no less than Qing Xian, so the real situation was that both of them had informed Yan Qing, but did not communicate with each other. This was the typical style of the orthodox Taoist. Chapter 21-29. The three of them waited while secretly observing the old monsters. Unfortunately, they didn't find any familiar ones. The universe was too big and there were too many capable people. How could it be so coincidental for a senior to appear here? After a month, the situation changed. At the highest temperature of the Fire Nebula, the old monsters began to gather. This might mean the beginning. How did they determine that the great path fragments have entered the path of no return? We are guarding here, but why didn't I feel any great path fragments passing through? Is it experience? Or a special method? Yan Qing asked. In terms of Tao state perception, the sword vein was not as good as the Dharma meridian. Of course, except for some monsters. She spread out his hands. I don't know. I didn't feel it either. Or, is it experience? It's not the first time they came here. Qing Xian said slowly, knowledge needs to be learned and accumulated continuously. Knowledge won't fall from the sky for nothing. Broaden your horizons and make more preparations before you go. Don't take it for granted and make a shameless guess. The great path fragments of the path of no return. Who says that they will definitely enter from the entrance like humans? If they really enter from here, how many fragments can they enter? The wormhole is long and endless. The space it exists in will directly absorb fragments from the wormhole wall. So although we didn't feel it, it doesn't mean that those fragments won't enter. It's just like entering the bridal chamber. Some people are officially married and enter with the beating of gongs and drums. Some sneak in the middle of the night by breaking the lock. Some dig a hole and sneak in. There are even some who have already stripped naked and waited on the bed. There are countless ways. Can you imagine it based on experience? She glared. If I didn't look at people, I would think that the one who is talking nonsense is little Lou. If you know, just know. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Are you uncomfortable without insulting people first? After hanging around with little Lou for so long, you didn't learn anything good. You are stained with all those bad habits. Where is the dignity of the three pure ones? Yen Cheng's mouth wasn't soft at all. After hanging around with these people for so long, he was at a disadvantage. You two can fight all you want, but can you stop bringing little E into the picture? As if all your bad habits were taught by me, Xian Yuan. When Xiaoyi enters the bridal chamber, she must have stripped naked and waited on the bed early in the morning. You are just a burrower. You don't even have the courage to sneak in and pick the lock. As for Ma Bailu, you're just someone who's been watching from the window for a while. The three of them taunted each other to buy time. This was indeed their first time doing something like this. Although they were bold and reckless, they still knew when they should not do something. She counted with his fingers. Excluding us, there are a total of 31 people. Among them, 25 were in the Blight realm, 6 were in the 5th Blight, and 19 were in the 4th Blight. As for the other 6 ancient techniques, they were all at the 2nd Severance. But I don't think all of them are from interior heaven. Smokey smiled. It seems like the three of us are the only ones who have just taken this step. I was wondering why those monsters didn't come. So he probably knows the qualifications to enter this place, so he doesn't dare to come? Qing Xian sneered. He doesn't even dare to come. How can he be considered a demon? She sighed. It must be a reminder from the orthodoxy. Just like me, actually, I was also warned by my sect. This place is temporarily not a place that I can set foot in at my level. If it weren't for worrying about the two of you, I wouldn't have come here to get involved in this mess. Qing Xian humphed coldly. Speak human. When has a supreme orthodoxy like yours ever put yourself in danger because of your friends? Then it must be because there are benefits to be gained. Why don't you not reach out to take the shards after you enter, and focus on the two of us first? She laughed dryly. Since we're already here, it wouldn't be good not to reach out, right? Let others think that I'm pretending to be virtuous here. That's not good. I'd better follow the crowd, right? Smokey looked at these two hypocrites, and was really somewhat speechless. Of course, she also knew that this place was not suitable for them now. There were countless monsters in the interior and exterior heaven. Either their background was not enough and did not know the news, or they had been warned by their sect elders. Those who came here were all peak-stage half-immortals, and there were too many monks and too little porridge. It would be very difficult to gain anything from fighting, and they would even put themselves in danger, so it was not very meaningful. But the way people of the Fifth Ring did things, over these tens of thousands of years, had more or less been tainted with a trace of the sword veins style. They were used to thinking after doing it and not thinking after doing it. Was this the right attitude? In fact, the three pure ones were well aware of this. Of course, in theory, it was wrong, but in a special environment, in a special era, you could no longer use those principles of being cautious, or else why would you stand out? If you wanted to show your divinity in front of people, you had to suffer behind their backs. Difficulties and dangers were not an excuse. You only had one life, and such opportunities were rare. Even if they had the chance to reincarnate and cultivate in the future, how could they encounter the change of eras? The great Tao changed, rising and falling one after another. In the innate great Tao, it was unknown whether reincarnation would still exist. You might not even have the chance to reincarnate, so you could only fight for the present. Everyone had their own ideas about the innate great Tao, and they were in different directions and fields. She had a unique merit in reincarnation, and she had some innate divine ability. Otherwise, she would not have reincarnated back to Xianyuan again and again. But this time, she felt that after she died, she would never be able to come back. It was not that she could not come back to Xianyuan, but that she would never have the chance to reincarnate and cultivate. This feeling was very idealistic, but she was now at the half-immortal level, so there must be a reason for her sudden impulse. Where was the reason? In reincarnation, she felt that there might be a problem with the innate great Tao of reincarnation. It might not disappear and be pushed down from the position of innate great Tao, but there might be a profound change in this great Tao. The principle of reincarnation would no longer be so inclined to reincarnate and cultivate. This kind of thing could not be discussed with others, except for little Rod Lu. She did not know where he died, and she had not seen him for many years. It was because of this feeling that she knew that time waited for no man, and she had to cut off all means of retreat. Everyone, as long as they were alert enough and had a keen intuition about the future changes in the universe, would choose to fight with their backs against the wall. She looked at the problem from the perspective of reincarnation, and Qing Xian and Shi looked at the problem from their own field. The great Tao came from the same source, and although the paths were different, their final goal was the same. This was the three of them complaining and quarreling, but no one would mention the idea of retreating in the face of danger. Not to mention that there were three of them now, even if there was only one of them, they would not shrink back. The half-immortals were getting closer and closer, and finally, 2 of the 5 decay took the first step and disappeared into the fiery nebula. With the beginning, the next step was logical. The old monsters disappeared one by one, quickly and in an orderly manner, as if the main course had been served, and the guests could not wait to take their seats. One could feel their eagerness, but they still maintained their poise in their actions. The 3 of them looked at each other, and without hesitation, they followed closely behind. The originally lively fiery nebula disappeared in an instant, leaving only the eternal heat, as usual. Chapter 21:30. Once they entered the wormhole, they immediately felt the flow of cosmic matter. Although it was still very slow, it was incomparably clear. This is the path of no return. It seems like something is flowing in. We are going down with the flow. But I don't feel any great Tao fragments. She complained as usual. The 3 of them followed closely behind the old monsters in front and went with the flow. Qing Xian shouted, "Shut up! I know you are very nervous, but isn't it too low-end to use words to mediate the mood? You are a half-immortal, not a half-grown brat. Look at senior sister, she doesn't say anything. This is temperament." Yen and I snorted. Why should I not say anything? Why should I have to put up with your endless **t every day? I thought that without little e, I would be able to have some peace and quiet, but in the end, you 2 old turtles came. Hey, why do I feel that these old guys don't take us seriously? What if they don't count us in when they divide the fragments? Snatch it by force? She clapped and laughed. Senior sister is mighty. Senior sister is heroic. I also feel that we are treated as outsiders who are here to watch. In the fiery nebula, no one cares about us, but they are whispering among themselves. I think we need a battle to show our strength. The fiery nebula said. Otherwise, if more than 40 old guys think that we don't have the qualifications to participate, then we will be in trouble. Qing Xian was silent. How could she not know the actual situation? There were circles everywhere, And a very important circle in the half-immortal level was these old monsters at the peak of half-immortal level. All of them were more than 10,000 years old and had seen a lot. Before the change of era, you don't allow them to fight with their old lives? The path of no return was the private land of these people. They were dividing the great Tao fragments here, working hard for their last step, for the new innate great Tao. You can't say that this is the era of young monsters, and that the 10,000-year-old monsters are outdated. As long as they are alive now, they belong to this era. To these old half-immortals, they might think that they are the grandfathers of the era. The reason why there were so few young geniuses, only the 3 of them, was largely because these old fellows had threatened and hinted at them openly or covertly. Little brats, don't come and snatch things from your grandfathers. You won't have a good ending. As the leader of the 3, he actually knew more than the other 2. Originally, he came with a fluke mentality, but after coming here, he found out that it was more than he imagined. To be honest, they probably didn't have any chance unless the fragments here were extremely abundant. No matter who it was, even if that guy Lu came, he wouldn't have any chance in the encirclement of 30 peak of half-immortals. This was a fact, and they had to admit it. Don't make a move first. Don't give the old guys an excuse. We have to show that we're here to watch the show, to broaden our horizons, and perhaps to pick up some scraps. We will wait. Wait for the great Tao fragment. See the fragments? Quantity? How easy it is. Let's see how the old guys are going to bite each other. My chance will come when they start biting each other. It didn't matter if it was to take the millet out of the fire or to stand on the side of the team. But before that, shut your stinky mouth. Senior sister, don't go crazy. She twisted his head. I have a mouth, and I won't regret it even if I die. Yen raised her eyebrows. No matter how sharp my Xianyuan is, no sword won't go crazy. Qing Xian sighed. This trip to the road of no return, they probably wouldn't be able to stop. Following the flow, they felt that the universe's medium was gradually speeding up, as if there was something in front of them that was attracting them. They still didn't see a single fragment of the great Tao, and they just ran wildly on this road of no return. This was the first time the 3 of them came here, and they didn't have any seniors who had experienced it before to give them pointers. Taking one step at a time was their countermeasure. Of course, no one provoked the old guys in front of them. Although they were stubborn, they knew what was important. Flying like this, the old guys in front didn't stop at all. Their goal was clear, and they just kept going forward. Obviously, they had a card up their sleeve. The 3 5-ring monsters obediently followed at the back. They tactfully didn't say much, didn't try to overtake them, and didn't cause any trouble. Their cautiousness wasn't without reason. The old guys were actually very disgusted with these 3 uninvited guests. They had crossed the line a little. You shouldn't be here, but you came. Are you here to snatch the tonic that your grandfathers need to save their lives? It wasn't easy to make a move in the fire nebula outside, and it would be easy for the news to leak. If word got out that they were bullying the weak, it wouldn't look good. Their plan was to find a reason to kill these 3 arrogant brats after entering the road of no return. However, the 3 youngsters behaved properly after entering. They didn't cross the line, and they couldn't find any evidence against them. If these 3 youngsters could really maintain such a humble attitude, they would be here to broaden their horizons and not participate in the fight. In that case, there was no need to kill them. There were more than 30 old people in their circle here. Would they care about 3 little worms? Everything depended on their own choice. They flew like this for a full 5 months. One could imagine how long this wormhole was. Wouldn't it take a few years for them to completely fly down? The Tao fragment was also absorbed from such a long distance. After all, it was something close to the essence Tao realm. It could ignore the invisible walls of the wormhole. Until one day, the 3 of them felt that the old guys in front of them were slowing down. They realized that they might have reached the end. They also slowed down and watched from afar, as if they were just watching the show. They slowly moved forward. In these 5 months, although they didn't cross the line, they didn't idle around. They observed the environmental characteristics of this wormhole. After a few months of observation, they had some insights. It was a large tunnel with a rather wide diameter. It was so wide that even a swordsman like Yen Qi could move freely in it. However, this tunnel wasn't straight. Instead, it was like the large intestine of a human body, winding and twisting. However, they wouldn't get lost in this winding because there were no forks in the road. It was just an intestine winding to the end. Even the thickness of the intestine rarely changed. However, when they began to slow down, they found that the diameter of the intestine here began to shrink rapidly. This was accompanied by the sudden increase in the speed of the universe's medium that filled the space around them. This was an inevitable phenomenon when liquid of the same flow rate suddenly narrowed. In the great rivers of the mortal world, such examples could be found everywhere. As cultivators, although they didn't understand the basic principle and couldn't describe it accurately, they understood the general idea. It was also here that they finally felt the aura of the Tao fragment. Jieyun, Qiyun, Qingyun, and Jieyun had just shattered. There were also the previous fragments, Nirvana, Chaos, 5 Taishang, and so on. However, they were few in number and could only be seen occasionally. Obviously, they couldn't collect all of them every time they came in. There was a deep reason behind this. Chapter 21:31. She would always be the first to speak. 13 fragments of the great Tao. 8 of them are the newest 4 fortunes, and the other 5 are Nirvana, Chaos, Tai, and Taichu. Oh, and there's even a Wuchang? That's it? That's not enough to share. Qing Xian sneered. It's best if it's not enough. If it's really enough, we won't even get anything. That was the case in theory, but the truth was, there were more benefits and less risk. How could one be sure? Smokey's attention was not on the fragments, but the intestines suddenly shrank like a larynx. The universe's medium here is turbulent, and we can't even maintain our form without using elemental energy. I want to know what's on the other side of the larynx. Will it expand back? Or will it just keep shrinking? She was speechless. Senior sister, we're already at this point. Don't be so curious. If you have the time, why don't you think about how we're going to escape after we snatch a few fragments? Which direction should we run to? Who runs first? Who covers? Smokey glanced at him. I just want to know what's on the other side. Is it the void of the universe? Only then can we decide which direction to run to. As for who covers, is there a need to consider? Isn't it one of you two? Don't tell me you two have the nerve to run first and leave me, a weak woman, to cover for you? She was speechless. You're weak? Then who's strong? But this was true. It seemed like only the two of them could stop them from behind. This had nothing to do with gender, but the specialty of Dharma Meridians was that they dug traps as they ran. Swordsmen should be the one in front. Qing Xian could not help but say, stop guessing. That side is longer than here. The exit is in the ice crystal world, Phoenix's nest. So if we really want to run, we can only turn back and run. This news came as a surprise to the other two. She was surprised. Phoenix's nest? This creature is extremely cold. I've cultivated for 3,000 years, but I've never seen a phoenix. Since it's on the way, this is a rare opportunity. Why don't we go from there? Smokey was also looking forward to it. I heard that phoenixes are noble and self-restrained, and are not confused by anything in the world. I really want to see if I can make friends with them. She was completely curious about beautiful creatures. This was the nature of Koenshio. Furthermore, Li Wuya's grandson was once on good terms with the phoenix. She had reincarnated a few times and was very clear about this. She was confident that Phoenix would definitely stand on her side if they really came into contact with each other. However, it was hard to say if they could become friends. Logically speaking, if Li Wuya could gain Phoenix's friendship, why couldn't she? But then again, what if phoenixes liked rough ones? It was obvious that Qing Xian knew more than them. This came from the long history of the three pristine orthodoxy. Very few secrets in the cultivation world in the universe could escape their eyes and ears. You want to see Phoenix? As far as I know, they will appear here to maintain order on the path of no return. It has never been missing. Yen Ti was puzzled. Why? Was it just because they were close? Or was there some other reason? At this level and on this scale, maintaining order is also very risky. What reason do they have to do this? Qing Xian shook her head. I don't know the specific reason. I'm not the all-knowing scholar of the universe. Please, senior sister, why do you have so many questions? If little Lu was here to ask blindly, I would have already charged him. She thought of a problem. Ma Bailu, is your information accurate? If Phoenix is here to maintain order and there is no chaos, then won't the three of us have no chance at all? Qing Xian sighed. It's too early to say this now. Whether there is a chance or not, how can there be a conclusion? Let's see. In principle, we should not have a conflict with Phoenix. They are the primordial beast kings and once united with us. This relationship cannot be broken. The great Tao fragment began to gather in the depths of his throat. She counted it very clearly. Not one more, not one less. However, the old guys did not make a move now because they were still faced with the problem of choosing 13 out of 31. There were basically no outsiders. The great Tao fragment was here and it was in the bag. If they did not allocate it in advance, it would be a chaotic battle. In the end, there would be very few winners. They were all old monsters who had lived for 10,000 years. This was a certainty. No one would rashly go forward and take advantage of others. They had their own rules. Looking at the old guys gathered together, no one knew what they were discussing. But it was nothing more than a deal where you let me go once and I'll give you some benefits. She could not help but say, are they treating us as nothing? Why don't we go over there and take a look? We can't be like silly boys and watch others eat steamed buns while we drool at the side? Yan Cheng also said, if we are too honest, others may not look up to us. Let's not fight for it first, but it's not too much to go through the throat and gain experience over there, right? If this is not allowed, then let's do it. Qing Xian sighed. If it was him alone, he would have gone over long ago. Once a person had something to worry about, a friend or a companion, and he was still the person in charge, he would have to consider more. There was nothing he could do about it. Let's go. Stick to the side. Don't cause any misunderstandings. The three of them stuck to the side of the throat and flew into the depths of the throat. As they flew, Qing Xian shouted to the nearest old cultivator. Old senior, where does that lead to? How long do we have to fly to get out? This question was full of ambiguity. It seemed like they were just looking, passing by, going over there. They looked like they were busy and did not want to disturb them. But no one knew that the three young beasts were just hiding their claws and teeth deeply, waiting for the moment to reveal themselves. No one answered them and let them talk among themselves. But at the same time, no one did anything to them. It was a critical moment now and everyone was arguing with each other. The three of them slipped away. She sighed again. I, she, have lived for 3,000 years and fought countless battles. I don't dare to say that I won all of them, but I have never been afraid of anything. I only walk on the main road and not the small path. I am upright and upright. Only others hide from me. When have I ever hidden from others? Why is it that the more I mix, the more I go backward? Now I actually choose to slip away? If this spreads out, do you still want your little face? Yan Cheng was impatient. Then you go on the main road. No one is stopping you. I like to slip away. She smiled. Forget it, I'll accompany you guys. Who asked me to be so kind? The three of them slipped away. The throat was very short and they passed through it in less than a minute. They felt that the front and back of the throat were two completely different worlds. One was as warm as summer and the other was as cold as ice. The instant difference in temperature was so great that they had to use their elemental force to resist. On the other side of the throat, it was a completely different scene. The flow of matter in the universe was extremely fast and the temperature was extremely low. The wonders of the sky were vividly reflected. Shishi's eyes were sharp. He suddenly pointed to the front. That was the direction of the jet. Look over there, there are 5 more cultivators approaching. Did they come in from the other side of the road of no return? The 3 of them looked over. Indeed, there were 5 points of light. They were moving against the flow and were getting closer and closer. Qing Xian sighed. The phoenix is coming. Chapter 21:32. It was the first time for the 3 of them to see a phoenix. Under their gazes, the 5 lights gradually appeared. From one point they could see the shape. It was shocking. 2 at the front and 3 at the back. The formation was neat. They flapped their wings. The frequency was not fast, but it was elegant. Even in such a strong cosmic jet, their feathers were not messed up. Their crowns flew like halberds. From afar, they could vaguely feel the aura of a king. The 5 phoenixes were all in the half-immortal realm. They were majestic. But if one looked carefully, the coordination between the wings and tail of the one at the back of the 5 phoenixes was a little strange. However, this was a little secret that could only be discovered between phoenixes. In the eyes of others, there was basically no difference at all. Perhaps this phoenix's mole was acting up? It's so beautiful. The king of all beasts, it deserves its reputation. Yan Cheng could not take his eyes off it. It was not that he was infatuated, but phoenixes were really amazing creatures. Their noble birth, cold character, and strong strength had always been the so-called role model of the righteous. She was also fascinated. This guy, whoever is lucky enough to have such a ride. Oh no, friend. He doesn't even need to pretend to be a friend. He will definitely shock everyone as soon as he appears. Who else but me? Unfortunately, for millions of years it seems that no one can ride a phoenix. Qing Xian was still quiet. The first 2 phoenixes are at the peak of half-immortal. The last 3 phoenixes are at the first step of half-immortal. Unfortunately, if it's one-on-one, I'm afraid we don't even have the ability to deal with one. She retorted, Ma Bailu, did you eat too much gunpowder? Why do you always want to fight just like little Stick Lu? We can also be friends. Think about it, a phoenix as a friend? It's inspiring to talk about it, and I'll gain face if I lead it out. The aura of a phoenix was indeed meaningless to humans. But psychologically it was more or less still a little bit. It depended on whether the cultivator's state of mind was firm. The 3 of them stood at the side as if they were watching a ceremony. They did not realize that their position was a little awkward. They were like subordinates welcoming the emperor. Gradually, the 5 phoenixes were getting closer and closer. They were so close that they could clearly recognize the gorgeous feathers on their bodies. That was truly the work of the god. Every single one of them was compatible with a certain color, emitting a dazzling radiance amidst the 7 colors. Light and shadow intertwined, dazzling the eyes. Of the 2 at the front, one was fiery red and the other was cyan. The 3 at the back, from the nearest to the furthest, had purple, blue, and the last one was multicolored. He had heard of streaky pork and luhua chicken, but he had never heard of a mixed-feathered phoenix. But it was still a phoenix. Real feathers, thick auras, and mysterious instincts. The world was vast and full of wonders. For a species like the phoenix that had not appeared in the origin world for tens of thousands of years, humans knew very little about it. It wasn't strange. Shishi's mouth was the cheapest. He whispered to his friend beside him. Among the 5, I think the green one is the most beautiful, followed by the purple one, followed by the fiery red one, then the sky blue one. The five-colored one is slightly worse. There was a slight poof sound in the air. Everyone did not pay attention to it, but Smoke Puppet had a different opinion. I think the purple one is the most beautiful, followed by the sky blue one, then the purple one, then the cyan one, and finally the five-colored one. You are colorblind, how could you know what is beautiful? The flock of phoenixes streaked across the sky not far from them. They did not even look at them, as if they did not exist in their field of vision. They flew straight to the throat. In the cultivation world, everyone was a cultivation creature, so ignoring them like this was actually very rude. But if it was the phoenixes, it did not matter, because they had been like this for millions of years. No matter who it was, they would not be angry, nor would they be happy. Their cold temperament had never changed, so no one cared about their disregard. But before Smoke Puppet's voice fell, there seemed to be another poof sound. This time, everyone heard it clearly. In just a few short breaths, the flock of phoenixes entered the throat. Their target was obviously those old human cultivators. On the cold side of the throat, there were only 3 young half-immortals left. It was still Shishi. If I said that I heard someone farting just now, would it be my imagination? Smoke Puppet glared at him. You have to be careful when you joke. That could also be the sound of turbulent air explosion. Do phoenixes know how to fart? They don't eat grains and there is no impure air in their body. How can they release chi? If you insist that it was the sound of farting, I would rather suspect that it was you. Qing Xian did not participate in their nonsense. Let's go back. We are just wasting time here. Let's go and see what the old guys are up to. Let's see if we can fan the flames a little and ignite the fire. The 3 of them went back, but Shishi was still not convinced. That was indeed the sound of farting. Could it be that after 3,000 years of cultivation, I can't even distinguish the sound of farting? So what if we don't eat grains? Can't we fart? We don't eat grains too, but there are people among us who like to fart. They call it training their sphincter muscles. That's little Rod Lu. The 3 of them went back the way they came and followed behind the flock of phoenixes. They wanted to see if they could find any opportunities. 31 old monsters at the peak of demi-immortal could not be dealt with on impulse. Confidence was confidence, but there must be a limit. The appearance of the 5 phoenixes and the 3 young demi-immortals did not attract the attention of the old guys. They had been here many times and knew that the phoenixes would appear whenever they were fighting for the Tao fragments in the road of no return. It was not for the fragments, but to prevent the destruction of the wormhole wall in the road of no return. The wormhole had existed for a long time, so long that even the phoenixes had forgotten when it appeared. They were already used to the life and cultivation in the ice crystal world. They did not want to change their way of life, so they were very concerned about the ancient wormhole. Even if humans did not care about it, Madame 11 stopped not far away from the space where the old demi-immortals gathered and cried out. The phoenixes are here, and the rules are still the same. Fellow Taoists, you can collect the fragments as you wish. But there is one thing, if you damage the wormhole wall in the fight, you will be destroying the nest of the phoenixes, and you will be the enemy of my phoenixes. She had said this sentence many times. The phoenixes did not know how to use soft words to negotiate, this was their characteristic. Their cold tone and cold attitude were not deliberately targeted at anyone or any race. The human cultivators basically understood this point, but it did not mean that everyone could calmly accept this kind of way of speaking. Previously, when they were maintaining order, because the Tao fragments only dropped one by one, the number of peak demi-immortal cultivators who came here was relatively small, only a dozen or so people. When the dozen or so demi-immortals encountered 4 or 5 phoenixes, their strength was almost the same. The phoenixes even had an advantage because they were stronger. Therefore, no matter how cold the words were, they could still listen to them. But now there were a total of 31 human demi-immortals, and their strength far surpassed the phoenixes. There were some proud and arrogant demi-immortals who felt uncomfortable listening to them. Chapter 21:33. The bad habits of humans would always be there if they didn't become immortals. In fact, even if they became immortals, would it disappear? Not necessarily. You would listen to those who were stronger than you, not because they were more reasonable, but because you were afraid of being beaten up. You would definitely not listen to those who were weaker, especially when their tone was not so humble. The Phoenix group was like this now. Their individual strength was still the same, but as a whole, the difference was too great. There were some human half-immortals who felt uncomfortable, but they weren't so shallow to show it. They had plenty of time. What was the hurry? Therefore, the situation became strange. 5 phoenixes and 3 half-immortal freaks were watching from afar, and in the middle, nearly 30 old cultivators were setting up the final rules. In the end, the battle of cultivators still fell into the hands. It was useless for you to say anything else. I'll stand and you'll lie down. That was the best excuse. Who would give up because of other people's threats? If everyone didn't fight, who would know how strong they were? What they had to decide was how to choose 13 winners from 31 people. She was watching from afar. Choose 13 out of 31. How can we do it in the fastest way to be the fairest? Yen Meng glared at him. Although this person's mouth was very sarcastic, you had to admit that this kind of person often made the travel mission less boring, and also a kind of relaxation. She might not be so talkative before he became a half-immortal, but in this small group, everyone was playing their role. Qing Xian was responsible for the steady direction, she was responsible for being thoughtful and meticulous, and she was responsible for stirring up the atmosphere. This was something that a group must have. A boring small group would not have fighting power, and would not have passion. Let's go to the arena. 2 by 2, there will be 15 or 16 left, and then. This question was indeed very difficult to answer. The key was speed. Can't you fight with everyone and then choose the top 13? If that was the case, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference even if they fought for a year. There were many other problems involved, such as the problem of death in the battle, the problem of the circle, the problem of whether they had obtained fragments before, and so on. How could there be absolute fairness? The change of the era was getting closer and closer, and the collapse of the Great Tao was getting lesser and lesser. If you give in once, who would give in the next time? After a few times, there would be no more fragments of the Great Tao, who would cry to. Therefore, Qing Xian was not in a hurry. This was because the more people there were, the more fragments there would be, and the more chaotic the competition would be. This was not a problem that could be solved by reason. It had nothing to do with the experience of living for many years. If it were those young evildoers from the interior realm, they would also behave the same way. In essence, the time was almost up, and there weren't many good items left. There were many people who wanted them, but few items appeared. It was that simple. Therefore, the battle between each other is cruel and slow. These old fellows would not choose such a self-harming method, so they would most likely choose a benchmark. If they could pass this test, they would stay. If they couldn't, they would quit. This is probably the best choice they can make. Yanqing agreed. Yes, that's right. But what was the benchmark? There are only 2 types here, 3 of us and 5 of the phoenixes. Is this the case? She returned to his normal state. When he was thinking seriously, he was as good as Qing Xian. Don't forget, there is still nature. This was the wormhole. It could also be used as a benchmark to achieve a certain effect. The advantage of this is that they don't have any thoughts, they won't be angry or happy, they will be consistent, they won't throw the game, and they won't make a deal. Their guess was correct. In such an environment, how stupid would the dozens of old half-immortals who lived for at least 10,000 years be to kill each other to decide the ownership of the final Tao fragment? Therefore, they decided to choose a benchmark without hesitation. In fact, the best benchmark was the 3 young half-immortal evildoers. They were the weakest group, at least in the eyes of the old cultivators. But it was also because they were weak and few that it was not feasible. Most of the old cultivators here could defeat and kill them, but it still couldn't decide anything. It was meaningless. The phoenixes, they were very good benchmarks, but the problem was that their strength was very strong. If they fought one against one, the benchmark might not fall, but the people who tried would fall. It was also meaningless. Therefore, they could only choose nature. They chose the wormhole. Their method was because the cosmic medium through the throat had the combination of speed and volume at the same time. It was a surging force of celestial phenomenon. Therefore, if anyone could rely on their own strength to block this surging force for a moment, then they would pass. They would wait until the end to see how many people could pass this test. If there were more than 13 people, then they would think of another way to compete. If there were less than 13 people, then they would pick the general out of the dwarves. This should be the most harmonious, fastest, and fairest method. There was no cruel life and death, no endless Tao realm battles, and no dirty private transactions. The throat was there, it was a natural phenomenon. No matter who tried, they would suffer the same pressure. It was very fair. But someone disagreed. Aunt Light 11 spoke again. Her voice was cold and her attitude was firm. My Phoenix clan opposes this method of competition. The wormhole wall has been in disrepair for a long time and has lost the ability to repair itself. Especially the throat, because it has to bear the greatest impact of the expansion of the cosmic medium. It is thinner and more fragile than other parts. Your so-called blockage here is actually suppressing. The cosmic medium from the outside will flow in endlessly, but there is no source. I don't need to say what will happen, but everyone is very clear in their hearts. It might be able to withstand the blockage of a few people, but it definitely can't withstand the attacks of 31 of you. Cosmic astronomical phenomena have their own objective laws. Destroying it by human means is an act that goes against the harmony of the heavens. I hope that everyone can think about it carefully and see if there are any other alternatives. Aunt Light 11 explained in detail. This was not her character. Usually, in such situations, when they encountered such untactful cultivators, they would directly drive them away or even kill them. There was no need to talk so much nonsense. But now was not the time. There were too many of them. She had to control her emotions. It was rare for her to speak reason, but the dissatisfaction in her heart was already accumulating. Phoenixes were not a race that was used to enduring humiliation. One of the aged cultivators narrowed his eyes. He had been dissatisfied with the Phoenix's condescending attitude for a long time. Cosmic astronomical phenomena are shared by all people in the universe. It is not a private property of any one of us. It is up to anyone to make their own decisions. You have your reasons, we have our reasons. Who should listen to whom? When the wormhole wall will break, it is useless for you and me to say it. We can only try and see. At most, we can stop before it collapses. But what if all 31 of us try and it still doesn't collapse? We can't use the inexplicable worry of the future to decide the present, right? Your Phoenix clan is the king of all beasts, not the king of the entire universe. Don't you think you are too arrogant? Chapter 2134. Elder 5 was very blunt. He had many human helpers, so he was not afraid of anything. Phoenixes might be the king of ancient beasts, but it was hard to say who would be in what state after the change of epoch. Even celestials had fallen continuously, so what kind of creature could maintain its position? With the start of a new epoch, it was hard to say who would be high up and who would fall into the mortal world, but there was one thing that could be confirmed, and that was the king now would definitely not be the king in the future. Otherwise, what was the point of the change of epoch? This was also the reason why these old cultivators dared to swagger into this place. The world had changed, and there were no more nobles. Maiden 11's expression turned cold. No one can use any excuse to destroy the walls of the wormhole, even if it is only a possibility. Whoever does so will be an enemy of the Phoenix tribe. Another second Severance ancient technique cultivator stepped out and laughed. Restrain your anger, restrain your anger. What fellow Taoist Guang said still has some logic. The wormhole walls are damaged, and there is really no return on the path of no return, then these shards of great Tao can no longer gather here. That is the logic. But I hope that fellow Taoist Guang can understand our difficulties. We can't have lived for more than 10,000 years, and end up killing each other for benefits like those young brats, right? Making use of the heavens to decide is the fairest method. In the present environment, can fellow Taoist Guang find a method that will not affect the wormhole walls at all? We can't ask the Phoenix tribe to help us decide, right? This was the real goal of these old cultivators. Using the throat blockage to compare abilities, how could they not know the effect on the wormhole? When the wormhole ruptured, not only would it destroy the extremely cold environment of the Phoenix nest, it would also lose a place that could perfectly gather shards of great Tao, so this method could not be used. Maiden 11 was confused because of her concern, and did not understand for a moment. In the end, she had taken the initiative to step out and fall into the trap of these scheming old foxes. Actually, even if she had not said anything, these old guys would definitely not have done this. That was practically shooting themselves in the foot. These old guys' ultimate goal was still the Phoenix group, and this was their only choice. But in order to not arouse the disgust of the Phoenixes, they had to think of a way to make the Phoenixes step out on their own, and not directly provoke them. This was probably the meaning of the saying, building one path in the open while hiding another in the dark. It was not advisable to completely enrage the Phoenixes. Although it was hard to say whether the Phoenixes would still be the king of all beasts after the change of era, they were now the kings of all beasts. They had the ability to summon immemorial beasts and half-immortals to occupy the road of no return. If things really escalated to that point, no one would be able to obtain the fragment unless there was a great battle between humans and beasts. Could the war be fought? The primordial beasts would definitely stick together. What about humans? Apart from their small circle of elites, who else would come? Are you counting on those half-immortal freaks to help you? They couldn't wait to gloat behind their backs. F***ck, you didn't let us go when there were benefits, but now you want us to risk our lives when there's trouble? After various considerations, he could only resort to such a roundabout method to provoke the Phoenixes to take the initiative to stand up. This way, even if there were losses with the Phoenixes' arrogant character, they would definitely swallow it down. It was really not easy for the old guys to think so clearly in such a short time. They succeeded. As soon as the Phoenixes stepped forward, they were immediately put in the wrong place. You don't allow us to use the power of nature. Why don't you Phoenixes do it? Aunt 11 knew that she had fallen into a trap, but she was not afraid. When dealing with humans, showing weakness meant death. Oh, sure. Fellow Taoist, since you have so many people on your side, why don't you let us Phoenixes help you out? My Phoenix clan is a hospitable clan. Since our friends are here, we have to satisfy them. The cave walls of the road of no return are thin and can't be repaired. If there are virtuous people who can fill it with their bodies, that would be the best. The Phoenix clan is willing to fulfill your wish. The 5 elder cultivators laughed. If fellow Taoist Guang wants to fulfill our wish, how fortunate. However, the Phoenixes are the kings of all beasts. Their strength is tyrannical, and everyone in the cultivation world of the entire universe knows this. If we fight to the death, I'm afraid it will hurt the relationship between the human race and the beast race. Why don't we change the method? Aunt 11 sneered. Appearing fierce on the outside but being timid on the inside was the common problem of these old cultivators. People became more timid as they lived, afraid that they would be consigned to eternal damnation if they took a wrong step. This was the fundamental difference between them and the young freak. They couldn't let go. However, she didn't have any good ideas. Maintaining the existence of the ice crystal world was their only goal. At this point, they could only get involved. It was just a matter of how deeply they got involved. Let's hear it. The 5 elder cultivators had a well-thought-out plan. This was something they had discussed long ago. A fight to the death doesn't mean much. At our level, meaningless fights should be avoided as much as possible. Moreover, without a reason, it's hard to have the mood to fight to the death. It's just that the fight will drag on for a long time, and it's hard to determine the outcome. How about this? You send someone to guard the throat, and we humans will rush in. If we pass, we'll be considered a success. If we fail, we'll be eliminated. The time limit is 15 minutes. This way, it won't be too bloody, and we won't drag it out uncontrollably. We'll rely on our own abilities, and the winner will win. What do you think, fellow Taoist Guang? The old cultivators were worried. In the current situation, the 3 demi-immortal freaks weren't strong enough to meet the standard of the test. The natural environment was too fragile, and it was easy to lose everything. They could only use the phoenixes as the standard. The phoenixes were too strong individually. If they fought to the death one-on-one, most of the people here would be in danger. That was why they came up with this compromise. There were a lot of changes when it came to breaking through. They could advance or retreat, and there was room to maneuver. Whether you fought with your life on the line or retreated in the face of difficulties, it was a very good test for the cultivator's state of mind and ability. It could be said that this method was more suitable at the moment. It left life and death to the cultivators themselves. If you weren't strong enough, you would have to consider whether to fight to the death or wait for the next collapse of the Great Tao. However, how could Ant 11 be so easily manipulated? After talking for so long, we're all working for you humans. Our phoenixes have become your whetstone to test your quality? You have the motivation to rush in, but where's the motivation to defend? The 5 elder cultivators were startled. This shouldn't be. When did the phoenixes learn to negotiate? However, on second thought, it was possible that they had nowhere to vent their pent-up anger, so they deliberately came to discuss them. It was fine. After all, they could use these phoenixes now. It was really unthinkable if the human cultivators were to decide who they belonged to. The 31 old cultivators all had their reasons. None of them were modest, but they really didn't want to go to the final step of fighting. Well said, well said. I wonder what kind of motivation the Phoenix clan needs? Let's hear it. There are 31 demi-immortals here, and their orthodoxy covers more than half of the cultivation world of the universe. There are very few practical problems that they can't solve. Ant 11 smiled. Our Phoenix clan doesn't care about external things. What do we need you for? Let's talk about the facts. If your people rush in, it's natural for you to take the shard. If you can't, then the shard will be taken by us. Isn't that fair? Chapter 21:35. Elder 5 shook his head. No. With this condition, everyone works so hard, and in the end, the Phoenix clan will benefit? That's not fair, extremely unfair. Madam 11 refused to budge. How can there be absolute fairness in this world? You're fair, but what about us? The stakes are right here, whoever wins gets to take it. It's a matter of course, no matter where you go. The two began to argue, haggle from afar. The 5 Rings trio watched with relish. She laughed. The first round, the old guys win. They successfully dragged the Phoenix into the quagmire. The second round, the Phoenix wins. They bit back and snatched food from the tiger's mouth. This time, a few of the 13 fragments will have to be divided. What do you think the Phoenix needs these Tao fragments for? I don't think I've heard of them researching other directions? Yen Qing snorted. Using and taking are two different concepts, okay? Even if they don't research them, it's good to keep them. There's no harm in having more skills. It's just that our chances are even lower. Qing Xian pondered. Something's not right. I saw the Phoenix's performance today, and it seemed to be a little different from what was described in history. They rarely compromise, let alone negotiate with outsiders. Why is it that when they see the real Phoenix, it's completely different? Yan Qing disdainfully said, What else can they do? These old guys are shameless. They use their numbers to force the Phoenix to compromise. If they don't agree, they'll destroy the road of no return. This is probably the Phoenix clan's weakness. I'm just curious, why do the Phoenix clan value the road of no return so much? Just because their nest is nearby? She was also very puzzled. Breaking through the throat? Will there be any changes in there? I think the road of no return seems to have restrictions on the Tao of space. It's impossible to jump through it through space. Qing Xian sneered. The throat is narrow and not suitable for complicated Tao changes. The walls reflect and refract, and many Tao states will be affected, whether it's their own or their opponents. This kind of terrain is more suitable for body meridians. Charge and fight. The Phoenix is the king of beasts, and its physical strength is unquestionable. Why are these old guys willing to choose such a favorable environment for the Phoenix? Yan Qing curled his lips. They're afraid of death. It's because this place is more suitable for physical strength. It's very difficult to kill a half-immortal in a short time. It's not like when the Tao state is unleashed, life and death. In a physical fight, there was still time to react. Exchanging injuries for a passageway was a method. These old fogies were truly afraid of death. That's why they chose an environment that seems to be unfavorable to them. In a battle between cultivators, the emphasis of each level was different. In principle, at the true monarch level, the application of the Tao realm was already deeply ingrained in one's bones, and it was also the only way to kill the opponent. At this time, physical attacks were secondary. Cultivators had many ways to prevent themselves from dying, and it was very difficult to kill with a single blow. This was the reason why the gap between the demonic beasts and humans would widen when they reached a higher level in the battle. Demonic beasts might be lacking in the Tao realm, but they were obsessed with their bodies. In other words, a body without Tao realm was just a pile of minced meat. With a Tao realm body, there were countless possibilities. Furthermore, the time was short and it was just a breakthrough. At the very least, he wouldn't lose his life just like that. The three cultivators of the fifth ring, heavenly 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 ring. It couldn't be said to be wrong, but in this era it was too slow. Actually, if we really fight, we might have a chance. As long as there are fewer of them. She was a little eager to try. Yan Chen was the same. They might not be as united as one. As long as we act quickly, there will be differences between them. Some will chase, some will continue to collect fragments, and some will just watch the show. Don't think that there are nearly 30 of them. If we really fight, as long as we jump, there won't be more than 10 of them who can keep up with us. Qing Xian remained calm. Wait a little longer. Let's take a look. We have to wait for them and the phoenixes to come a few rounds before we can decide on a strategy. Also, don't forget that the phoenixes also want fragment. Whether they are real or fake, it's best that we get their tacit consent. The three of us have to deal with the old cultivators and the phoenixes at the same time. That's courting death. The bargaining between Ant 11 and the old cultivators finally came to an end. To be honest, she was not good at this, but considering that she had to give Little E a normal way to obtain fragments, she could only bite the bullet and negotiate. The final result was that each phoenix would be able to obtain a large fragment for stopping 4 people in a row. They could collect it immediately. Why 4? This was full of open and covert struggles. To the phoenixes, this was a little disadvantageous. However, Aunt 11 valued the immediate collection more. She would let little E get the benefits first. As for the rest of them, it did not matter whether they could obtain fragments or not. To the old cultivators, they had their own ideas. They were all experienced old cultivators and had a deep understanding of their own strength compared to the phoenixes. Among the 31 people, there were 4 or 5 who could fight the phoenixes alone. The rest could not. However, if they only wanted to break through the throat, they believed that almost half of the old cultivators here could pass this stage. Their goal was to eliminate half of them. Their plan was that each phoenix would be able to obtain a fragment for stopping 4 people. Their battle records could not be accumulated. For example, if the fire phoenix stopped the phoenixes 3 times and failed the 4th time, her battle record would have to be counted from the beginning. It was the same for changing phoenixes. Continuity was the key. On this point, the old cultivators did not give in. They made it very clear that if they did not set this rule, sooner or later, all 13 fragments would be in the hands of the phoenixes. What was the point of them coming here? The requirements for the phoenixes to obtain fragments were very strict, but it was very easy for the human demigods. This imbalance was because the phoenixes were individually stronger and the overall number of phoenixes was insufficient. It was a strange and complicated game. This was how the 5th ring trio saw it. I can roughly guess what the old cultivators are thinking. It is impossible for the phoenixes to last through 4 rounds because at the end of every 4 rounds, they will definitely send out one of their strongest people. Their strength is similar, so it is not difficult for them to pass. I think the 3 of us can also do it, but I can't guess what the phoenixes' goal is. It is completely different from their usual style of doing things. They seem to be indecisive and indecisive. They are being led by the nose by the old cultivators. They don't need fragments, but now they are asking for them. This is very dangerous because once the phoenixes are injured in the process, the old cultivators will definitely spread the news that the phoenixes covet the fragment. Since they are useless, why do they need them? Shi was very puzzled, but his 2 companions could not answer him because they were also puzzled. Yan Cheng was very speechless. I heard that the phoenixes are also very intelligent. They are not inferior to the heavenly foxes. Why now? Qing Xian was still calm. What now? We haven't seen the result yet, right? Why are we using guesses to control our emotions? Let's continue watching and then judge. I have a hunch that something is wrong. I am afraid that the 3 of us can't stay out of this. Chapter 2136. Let's hope your premonition comes true. It was rare for Shi to express his support. These old fellows had already been seen through by them. They were tough on the outside but weak on the inside, putting on airs. Their excessively long lifespan made them consider too many things, but they lacked the most important thing for a cultivator: to press forward. Smokey reminded him, Shi, don't be too optimistic. Their weakness is that they don't want to take risks when they are evenly matched. When the gap is obvious, they will retreat. Once they see a weakness in you, they will be the most ruthless terminator. They have a long way to go. So if we are going to fight, the first 3 axes must be swung with force. Qing Xian praised, Senior sister, you are right. Exactly. I just feel that both sides are a little strange. The phoenixes are not like phoenixes, and the old monsters are not like old monsters. They seem to have an indescribable indifference to the phoenixes? Shi nodded and changed to a more relaxed topic. Which phoenix do you think will be the first to fight? I guess it will be the purple one, a 1-step half-immortal. It will be a good opportunity to test the gap between the 2 sides. Smokey disagreed. Using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Why must you test them? You people from the Dharma lineage are so slow. If you ask me, it will be the fiery red and green phoenixes, the two-peak half-immortal phoenixes. They will directly make the old guys despair and disrupt their rhythm. The two of them looked at Qing Xian. Qing Xian smiled bitterly. Don't look at me, I really don't know. It seems that whoever goes first has a reason. It doesn't matter, right? Among the three of them, Smokey was the one who gambled the most. This was a bad habit she had in her previous life. Why don't we make a bet? Whoever loses will be the one to cover the rear. Qing Xian she was speechless. This senior apprentice sister was too headstrong. She was still thinking about the joke about who was the one who brought up the rear. In this aspect, she would not show any weakness, and would not be at ease to become the target of protection. Qing Xian did not want to spoil her mood. Moreover, if it was only 1 out of 5, they actually had no chance. All right, I choose the green one. Shishi's target did not change. I still choose the purple one. The most impressive one. Senior sister, you will definitely choose the fiery red one? Smokey thought about it and felt that this kind of bet was not exciting enough. She had a belligerent personality. Why should I choose the fiery red one? I choose that streaky pork. She sighed. This senior sister of his would never give up any opportunity to fight. She was doing this on purpose. After everyone had set the rules, the 5 old cultivators stretched out their hands. We humans have to trouble the Phoenix clan to help us. It's really embarrassing. But for the sake of the wormhole's safety, I'll have to trouble you. Madame Light 11 did not express her opinion. She turned around and looked at her companions behind her. Little E, how about you go to the first formation? I'm guessing that if you're late, it won't be easy for them to collect the fragments. They'll be distressed and worried that there might be trouble. So, the sooner the better, before they have the time to feel regret. Lu Xiaoyi changed the topic. Aunt 11, I want to know, are all the human cultivators who have entered the road of no return so rude to you? This doesn't seem to match the legend. Madame Light 11 sighed. Isn't the end of the era coming soon? Whether or not the phoenix is still the king of beasts, whether or not it can still command the other beasts is still unknown. So, it's normal that some people don't respect it. When people leave, the tea cools down. Although we haven't left yet, we'll be leaving soon. Lu Xiaoyi, on the other hand, was fixated on it. Disdain is the phoenix's great skill. I know that although it can't really exert pressure and shock on humans, there are actually some additional effects, such as respect when meeting, politeness, reverence. Is that so? Madame Light 11 sighed. Why are you bringing that up? Lu Xiaoyi insisted. Aunt 11, I'm serious. Madame Light 11 was surprised. Yes. Humans respect the phoenix very much. It's an auspicious sign. This concept is deeply ingrained. After millions of years, it has become a fixed way of thinking. In addition, we don't usually appear in the main world's mortal world, and we rarely participate in those wars and dispute. So, when facing humans, although disdain isn't very effective, the first impression won't be bad. Just like those 3 young half-immortals on the other side of the throat. Although they secretly say some crazy things, they still respect us phoenixes from the bottom of their hearts. Sticking close to the wall is their subconscious behavior. But these old cultivators are different. Since the collapse of morality 2,000 years ago, they began to gather at the road of no return. Later on, more and more people came. I don't know how the secret of the road of no return was leaked, but it seems to have gone out of control. It's not completely a sect with a long history. These people don't have the slightest respect for us phoenixes. It's just that this time, when there are so many of them, it's more obvious. They knew how to restrain themselves before. Is this the deep-rooted bad habit of humans? The phoenixes may be the king of beasts that have passed their prime. Of course, they don't need to hold us up anymore. It's quite tiring. We don't care. Lu Xiaoyi asked, do you feel that they have a very strange tendency to treat the phoenixes? There are more than 100 people, and they come in all shapes and sizes. They all have their own personalities and experiences. It's normal to have differences in their orthodoxy, but how can they possibly converge in their behavior? There are those who don't care about the phoenixes and think that they will fall from the altar in the future. There must be those who care, those who agree, and those who think highly of them, because they have been instilled in them since they were young. Even for people like me, there are those who hate them to the bone, and there are also those who admire them. What's more, you phoenixes, why do you have such an inexplicable indifferent attitude in this circle of old cultivators? Aunt 11 nodded. She admitted that this little guy's judgment was very accurate. But was this kind of small matter worth caring about? Or was there a hidden meaning? Yes, of course we feel it. But what we're thinking is that there might be some kind of consensus in their circle. Is it certain that the phoenixes are destined to fall after the change of the demonic beast era? So, everyone looks down on us? Lu Xiaoyi let out a long breath. Okay, I understand. I'll be the first to go in and guard the throat, but I won't just stop them from passing through. If there's a chance, I'll try my best to kill as many as possible. Aunt 11, you must be mentally prepared. Aunt 11 frowned. Little EU. Lu Xiaoyi smiled coldly. Actually, there's another possible reason why they look down on the phoenixes. That is, they have been rooted by the fallen immortals of the immortal court of the upper realm. Their bodies can't feel it at all, but the thing that's been planted is exerting a subtle influence in them. That's why they're afraid of death. Immortals are most afraid of death. That's why their arrogance is ineffective. Because the phoenixes can't look down on immortals, even if it's a trace of mystery that's been planted. Chapter 2137. Aunt 11 was enlightened. She had discussed with Lu Xiaoyi countless times about how the immortals planted karma in the lower realm. There were many guesses and imaginations, but she was not as sharp as this little guy. He was able to determine the true origin of these old cultivators with just a few clues. Even these old cultivators themselves did not know. His judgment was very accurate. In fact, this was what she had been suspecting all these years. Why were these 10,000-year-old old cultivators so slow in doing things? If it were the cultivators of the main world, they would have fought long before the Fire Nebula. If they had the ability, they would enter. If not, they would scram. How could nearly 30 people walk here unscathed? They obviously wished that the people around them would die without a complete corpse, but they could still talk and laugh along the way. They did not care about the phoenix because something hidden in the depths of their souls had unknowingly taken effect. This made them disdain their deep-rooted habit. This was a step in their ascension to the upper realm, a race that should be ordered around. Why did he choose this circle? Of course, he chose this circle because the half-immortals in this circle were the safest for the immortals' arrangements. They did not have to worry about the upper realm, and they rarely had to worry about the problem of combat power. They were already the top power of the main world, and were only one step away from becoming immortals. They only needed to wait quietly for the immortals' arrangements, and then wait for the beginning of the era to change. They were the safest candidate. Lu Xiaoyi's reminder immediately made her realize the true identity of these old cultivators. However, she still did not understand. Why did he have to kill such a group of people? Shouldn't he stay away from them? Or befriend them? Or get them to help him? However, after thinking deeper, she understood why Lu Xiaoyi did this. He had to kill them. He had to kill them. These people did not even care about the phoenix. How could they befriend a half-immortal monster like you? The three evildoers who were obediently standing by the side as punishment were the best proof. They did not care about you. Their true friends could only be each other. Those immortals who used to be very familiar with each other were their social circle. When the era changed, the old and the new fought. There was no wall to ride on. If they could not become friends, they would definitely be enemies. Would you wait for them to completely awaken their immortal instincts before killing them? Or would you kill them easily before they awakened? Even a fool would know what to choose. Madame 11 watched as the little fellow slowly flew towards her throat. She felt a chill in her heart. She had been with him for 100 years. He had been mischievous, obedient, innocent, and naive. All of this was fake. When she really met with trouble, this back view was no different from the back view of another person from 20,000 years ago. Glutton immortal. Not kill. Instead, he killed even deeper, erasing all traces, severing karma, and crippling reincarnation. It wasn't just killing in the physical sense, it was killing in the spiritual sense. The glutton immortal would cause karma, but this was the karma that the cultivators of the origin world loved the most. This was because the immortal court had records of the heavenly Tao. Every immortal had a record with the heavenly Tao. The cultivators of the origin world would not have them. Because there were too many of them, even the heavenly Tao could not pay attention to all of them. The only way for the cultivators of the origin world to leave their mark in the heavenly Tao was to become an immortal glutton. The original immortal was gone, leaving behind the title of glutton immortal. The more one killed, the easier it was to attract attention. Until the era changed, the heavenly Tao swept a glance and said, "Hey, there's someone here who seems to be quite strong?" It wasn't a given, but the only thing the cultivators of the origin world needed was attention. It was recommendation. It was the list. Otherwise, in the vast sea of people, it would be like a sea of books. Who would know which one to read? If no one recommended, then he would recommend himself. The glutton immortal recommended himself. This little guy made his decision in such a short time. Just Aunt 11 sighed. What about 31 old cultivators? How could he dare to think about it? But the Phoenix's position determined that she couldn't stay out of it. First, it was because of old friendship, second, it was because they knew each other, and third, she also wanted to leave her mark in the heavenly Tao. Her mind spun rapidly, and she began to consider the question of how 5 half-immortals could kill 31. But could there be an answer to this question? When Lu Xiaoyi moved, she laughed loudly. "Senior sister, congratulations. If you want to run, you'll be the first to run. Then Qing Xian and I will block the disaster for you." Yan Gui was speechless. "This streaky pork, why did you choose him first? I don't see what's so special about him. Moreover, in terms of elegance and nobility, although the 5 phoenixes are similar, if you compare carefully, it seems that only this streaky pork is a little inferior. Is this my misconception?" Qing Xian smiled and nodded. "So, not only can you not judge a book by its cover, you also can't judge a phoenix by its cover. If I remember correctly, when the group of phoenixes passed by us, you and junior brother Shi randomly commented. 2 strange sounds came from this streaky pork's direction. Combined with your big talk, you ranked this streaky pork as the ugliest one, so he's like this. Actually, what I mean is that you two are ting." She thought for a while. What you said seems to make sense. Although this streaky pork isn't beautiful, it suits my temper. It's a pity that so many people are watching, otherwise I would go in and help him. Looking at the streaky pork flying and swaying and disappearing into the throat, because of the sudden contraction of the universe's medium, the throat was full of unpredictable changes. Speed, pressure, temperature, when these simplest celestial phenomena gathered together, even if they couldn't pose a fatal threat to a half-immortal, they could still isolate people from spying on them to the greatest extent. In such an environment, it was often more difficult for the defender, because he had to accurately capture the opponent's movements in the countless chaotic information. Shi's mouth didn't stop. This journey was really too inexplicable. Why does it have to be in the throat? Can't they fight on both sides of the throat? It's not like they're small cultivators. Why are they afraid of being watched? Moreover, why do I feel that both sides are afraid of being watched? What's the reason? Aren't there only a few kinds of phoenixes' original magical powers? Are there any new ones? Not to mention the old guys, each person has one chance, what else can you reveal? This is really strange. There was a strange whistling sound coming from the throat. This was the beginning of the challenge. The old guy's order of the challenge was very old-fashioned, which was to draw lots. Of course, they wouldn't keep drawing lots. If phoenixes successfully intercepted 3 people in a row, they would send out one of the top few half-immortals to break Phoenix's continuous success, then everything would start from the beginning. They couldn't see the scene of the battle, but they knew that the breath in the throat was changing abnormally. It was very intense, as if 2 giant beasts were colliding with each other. Yen Chen was also dissatisfied. Either we fight or watch people fight. Why are we waiting outside for the result? This trip is very boring. Since the Fire Nebula started, we have been enduring. Qing Xian, let me tell you, when I can't stand it anymore, don't blame me for acting on my own. Before his voice died away, a breath came out from the throat. For people like them who were used to fighting, it was very familiar. That was the phenomenon of Tao disappearing from the sky. Chapter 2138. This Tao vanishing heavenly phenomenon made everyone very shocked. The reason why they used this method was that the old cultivators did not want to kill too much and did not want to be involved in bloodshed. Otherwise, why would they be killed by the phoenixes? Wouldn't it be better for them to fight among themselves? Tao astronomical phenomenon was a human's, not the phoenixes. Because the phoenix's rebirth from fire was very special and did not have such an aura. But the death of a human half-immortal would not make the old guys say anything. This was the rule. In the cultivation world, no one could guarantee your life, especially in a confrontation. There were countless accidents and countless coincidences, so you had to adapt to these. Yelling about the death of a person was not in line with their status, and it also went against the rules set before. Life and death were predestined, wealth and honor were in the hands of the heavens. But Aunt 11 understood. She knew that this guy had started. Just like his sword master, once he started, he would not let it go. She had to be prepared early. If the casualties were too high, who said that the old guys would not do anything in desperation? But the strength of the 4 phoenixes was still a little weak. She looked at the 3 young monsters. Although it was a little inadequate, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. She held back his laughter. It was very difficult to hold back. Because the phoenixes did what he always wanted to do but did not dare to do. Streaky beef. I really didn't expect that a 4th decay cultivator would die in such a short time. I say, is the phoenix's strength so terrifying? Smokey's eyes were also shining. I don't know. We have never met before. It was a good kill, very straightforward, a collision of physical strength. It seems that the phoenixes are the kings of all beasts for a reason. She could not help but say, the key is, did Streaky Beef kill on purpose to establish his power? Or was he forced to that point and had no choice? This damn throat, I can't see clearly at all. Smokey gloated. This is interesting. I feel that we may not be idle in the future. The possibility of being involved is very high. Hey Qing Xian, why aren't you talking? Are you mute? We know that you have always considered yourself as the leader. We all know that, but you don't have to act like a shrewd person because of this. Who doesn't know who you are? She agreed. You're right. This Taoist always acts like you are all childish, and I'm old. Qing Xian raised her head and looked calmly at her 2 companions who never stopped talking. She said softly, Just now, when you were talking nonsense, the leader of the Phoenixes sent me a message and asked me a question. If they want to keep all the old guys here, are we going to join them or not? This time, Shi and Yancheng were both dumbfounded. What they said before was just a kind of mood. When it came to a decision, they could no longer speak without thinking like before, because this matter concerned their life and death. This was no joke. They were humans, just like the old guys. Killing one or two old fellows was one thing. Complete annihilation was a different matter, because the nature of the battle had changed. Let's not talk about whether or not he could succeed. The possibility of this happening was really low. Even if they were lucky enough to succeed, so many old cultivators had been destroyed by the flock of phoenixes. How could the three of them survive alone? Just based on Phoenix's historical reputation? She resisted his impulse. We don't have enough information. What are the benefits? Qin Xian replied. Phoenix doesn't want any of the fragments. Yan Chen's breathing quickened. This is a drawing. It's a castle in the air. Just based on these empty words, they want three of us to die? The possibility is too low. I need a feasible plan, not a light promise. Qin Xian looked at them with a strange expression. There's no plan. There's no plan. It's even less feasible. That Phoenix only said that one of her friends, Lu Xiaoyi, told her that if there's any trouble, she should look for the 3 5-ring idiots. The three of them stared at each other, but she was still the smartest. That fart of streaky meat, at their level, it was impossible for there to be any secret that could keep them in the dark all the time. They were all 7 orifices and could see through anything. Qin Xian sighed. Don't say anything else. Write your wills, listen to the signal, and prepare to risk your lives. Yan Cheng laughed and scolded. What's wrong with me saying that he's the ugliest? Now it seems that the feathers on his body were borrowed from other phoenixes. He's neither fish nor fowl, and he dares to vent his anger on me? Sooner or later, I'll catch him and block his eyes. She couldn't help but laugh. I support you, senior sister, but after this, I want to ride a phoenix once. Qin Xian listened attentively. The other two didn't disturb him, knowing that he was communicating with the phoenixes. Qin Xian's expression was still calm before, but now it became more and more serious. After he finished communicating, he turned to look at the 2 pairs of eager eyes and sighed. I just told Phoenix that we're willing. Then she told me that when we're fighting with those old guys, we have to be careful of the things that escape from the depths of their souls at the last moment. That's the key to killing them. She was startled. There's something foreign in the depths of their souls? They're the highest level cultivators in the main world. Who can grow things in their natures? Unless it's an immortal. I say, what does Phoenix mean by that? Qin Xian said word by word. The meaning is very clear. We're participating in a celestial killing feast. This is also the reason why that bastard Streaky Meat tried to kill them. He's leaving his name in the heavenly axiom. Shi's gaze became sharp, which was rare. Little E is really something. She knows to give her brothers and sisters this opportunity. There's no need to say anything else. If we can get out of here alive, our chances of becoming immortals will increase by at least 20 to 30%. My big flail is already unable to endure the thirst. Yan Chern closed his eyes slightly. We're outnumbered. We're going to explode from the beginning. Don't disturb me. Let me think about what to do to be worthy of this opportunity. Qin Xian was speechless. She knew it would be like this. She was supposed to be the leader, but she couldn't be the one stirring the **T. Once the **T stir came, everyone would have to dance with the stick involuntarily. Just wait. Let's hope that the stick can kill a few more of them before those old guys react. That way, the pressure on everyone will be less. Phoenix told me just now that they can only deal with a dozen at most. How many can we deal with? No matter how you look at it, it's not enough. She closed his eyes. I can deal with 1. Leave the rest to Streaky Meat. He's tough, he won't die. Qin Xian found herself speechless. That was reasonable, but when did the gap between them become so big? The situation had taken a turn for the worse. She originally thought that she would be an irrelevant spectator, but now she found herself about to enter the stage. She was a careful person and considered more comprehensively. Perhaps they needed a formation? A formation that could provide a certain amount of protection for everyone. Chapter 2139. Just as the three of them started to prepare, the second Tao celestial phenomenon arrived. They knew that this was inevitable, so did the Phoenix. However, the old guys could not sit still anymore. Elder 5 looked at Lady 11. "Is your esteemed friend going on a killing spree?" Lady 11 looked disdainful. "If you can't afford to lose, then leave this place. This is the territory of the Phoenix clan. We don't welcome those who don't have manners and think too highly of themselves." Elder 5's eyes flashed. He could tell that the Phoenix was dissatisfied with their performance after entering. Ever since the Merit Shard appeared, the Phoenix clan had been maintaining order here. The relationship between the two parties had been tense time and time again. The Phoenix was dissatisfied with the arrogance and rudeness of the human cultivators, while the humans could not stand the Phoenix's superiority. This was something that would happen sooner or later, but they did not expect it to happen here. Since there was an agreement, this was the prerequisite for the survival of the cultivators. The third half-immortal accepted the order and came out. He was not as calm as the previous two, but appeared to be worried. He had to make a choice. Should he prioritize breaking through the blockade, or should he prioritize saving his own life? No one could teach him this kind of thing. His name was Qianzong, a genuine Buddhist origin. He was famous in the exterior realm and was only a step away from the fifth decay in the past few years. His future was bright, but the current situation put him in a dilemma. He could clearly feel the hidden killing intent in the flapping of the five-colored phoenix's wings. He sighed in his heart. Since it was the king of all beasts, how could it endure the arrogance of the human cultivators? Immemorial beasts were not good-tempered. Of course, their king would only be more ferocious. This had nothing to do with beauty on the surface. Qianzong came out of his throat and began to prepare to break through. It was as if the fear of the Phoenix had never existed in him. Not only him, but many people in their circle also felt the same. They didn't even realize this change in themselves. The epoch was about to change, and all the order would be broken up. To the humans, the order of the orthodoxies would be reset, and it was the same for the immemorial beasts. The high and mighty phoenixes and rocks were destined to fall from their pedestals, so what was there to be afraid of? He still wanted to break through. There was no reason to give up in the fight for the great Tao. The only thing he needed to be careful was not to force himself when breaking through. He had to leave himself a way out. In short, don't treat it as a challenge, treat it as a battle. He guessed that the two people in front of him had lost their lives here because of the wrong mentality. If he was cautious and didn't take any risks, as a fourth blight cultivator, how could he lose his life in front of a one-step phoenix? At most, he wouldn't be able to break through and defeat them. With that in mind, he conjured a great manifestation incantation. He wasn't in a hurry to enter, but instead, he expanded his manifestation Buddha world forward. His goal was very simple. When the Buddha world filled the throat, it was the opportunity for him to sneak in. In his own Buddha world, he was an eternal existence. This method was different from the previous two half-immortals who used their corporeal bodies to cross, and it was changed back to the collision of Tao realms that belonged to half-immortals, and it was also the method that he was most familiar with. In his impression, in the end, he and the Phoenix would fight over the formation of the world of Buddha, and then they would decide whether to go or not according to the specific situation. This process might consume even more time than the collision of their bodies, and he wasn't sure if 15 minutes would be enough for him to execute it. However, safety came first, and he would rather lose this opportunity to obtain a grand Tao fragment than lose his life here. He had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. It wasn't easy for him to last until the change of the era, and he couldn't drop the chain at this crucial moment. It would be too much of a loss. That was what he thought. In his subconscious, the depths of his soul supported his judgment, but in terms of battle instinct, it was more radical than what he imagined in his consciousness. He couldn't feel this kind of contradiction. His consciousness wanted to be more stable, but his hands didn't stop moving, as if they were two different people, but this kind of subtle difference was controlled within a safe threshold. This was the method of the immortals. They didn't snatch, they didn't invade, instead, they let their original body invade me. In fact, no matter who was invading who in the end, it was just a fusion body. Out of his expectation, the expansion of the manifestation Buddha world was very smooth. It wasn't obstructed, resisted, or invaded by the phoenix at all. In a short span of 10 breaths, his Buddha world had already filled the entire throat space, but because it was too smooth, he didn't know what to do instead. He could clearly feel that the phoenix was in the Buddha world, still flapping its wings and waiting there, indifferent to the encirclement of the Buddha world. If it was another opponent, he wouldn't hesitate to launch an attack, because in his Buddha world, he had enough confidence. But if it was a ferocious bird that had already killed 2 half-immortal old cultivators, how could he treat it as an ordinary opponent? Experience and intuition told him that he could give it a try, but there was a faint doubt in the depths of his consciousness. If he compared persevering until the change of the era and taking the risk to fight for the fragment now, there was no necessary connection. It belonged to an indifferent risk. In such a dilemma, the only way he could deal with it was to compromise, attack first, and then decide whether to break through or not based on the situation. In a battle between masters, it was a big taboo to have an unclear target. He had committed this taboo without knowing it, and still thought that he had considered it thoroughly and knew when to advance or retreat. Such a situation would never have happened to him thousands of years ago. Back then, he was also a person who was known for his decisiveness in killing in the exterior realm, but people always changed. Under the subtle influence of the spring water and the gentle breeze, he unknowingly became a little different, but he always thought that it was just a natural response for every cultivator before the change of the era. The Buddha world shook, as if a world had come alive, with devout believers, monks, ancient temples in the distant mountains, and the sound of the Tihu bells. These scenes would slowly develop, and eventually form a Buddha world filled with gods and Buddhas. When that time came, even the phoenix couldn't escape the pain of being burned by the flames. Originally, this process didn't need to be so slow. He could also form it in an instant. The reason why he did it slowly was because he was worried about the phoenix's counterattack, giving him room to withdraw at any time. The phoenix still didn't move, immersed in the Buddha world, and incomparably enjoyed it. This made Qian Zong secretly moved. This phoenix was actually proficient in Buddhism? This was good news. What he liked to kill the most were these half-baked people. Compared to the Buddha world that he had immersed himself in for tens of thousands of years, what was the use of this rough knowledge? At this time, the power of experience had already gained the upper hand. If he didn't attack now, when would he? But the persistence in the depths of his consciousness still didn't fade, so in the end, his strategy was still to attack quickly and secretly. When the phoenix was in a flurry, he broke through the throat passage. The gods and Buddhas all over the sky, the power of Buddhism was everywhere in the Buddha world. This was something that no one could avoid. Qianzong, on the other hand, split into 10 different forms and quietly passed through the sky of the Buddha world. He was only one step away from the Buddha world, which was the throat passage. At this time, his body felt cold, and thousands of sharp points suddenly burst out. The past, present, and future were all under a fatal attack at the same time. Chapter 2140. In the Tao disappearing astronomical phenomenon, Very few people would notice the faint light in the center of the astronomical phenomenon, but Lu Xiaoyi was not among them. His ultimate goal was this thing: a phoenix feather pierced through like lightning, wrapping around that ball of light and then retreating. This was already his third time today. At first, he had thought that only a portion of these old guys had been mysteriously planted by celestials, but by the looks of it now, it was at least the majority, or even all of them. It could be said that the celestial court's sense of danger was already very urgent. Or perhaps this circle of top-notch great cultivators of the origin world had already been completely controlled by these mysterious people who had been planted with celestial seeds. This range was a little big. There were still 28 left. He only hoped that he could eliminate more threats for his friends here. 8 against 28, it was far from enough. But he did not think that these old guys would be so foolish as to really walk into a trap one by one. He might have one more chance. Then, no matter what excuse the old cultivators used, they would not continue to challenge the trial. As the Buddha realm collapsed, innumerable broken pieces of tools scattered out. These were all the possessions of the hidden sect. Of course, no one here was interested in them, and only one person reached out to pick them up. She smiled. "Ma Bailu, you can't be that bad, right? You're so poor?" Qing Xian ignored him, and only closed his eyes to focus. Very soon, he opened his eyes. "That grandson has something to tell me. His butt is stained with sh*t, and he's counting on me to wipe it for him." Shi Yen couldn't help but admire the tacit understanding between these two people. Little Staff was inside, and Ma Bailu only knew to prepare water and towels outside. That grandson probably can only kill one more person. Then, these old cultivators will definitely find an excuse not to be eliminated. This is also in line with my judgment. They are not so stupid as to deliver their heads one by one. I estimate that the fourth cultivator will find a second severance peak stage, or fifth decay, the strongest one. If that is still not enough, no one will continue to persist in this kind of meaningless death trial. In this kind of situation, there are only 8 of us and the Phoenix added together, and the opponent is 27 or 28, so there is no way to fight. So, we need a formation, a very special formation. She chuckled. "I'm the best at this. Even you, Ma Bailu, can't do it. But I will also speak the truth. Time is limited, and I cannot be too brazen, so even if the formation instantly formed, it can't possibly trap close to 30 people. It would be more like a few laps, but it wouldn't take long. This is the essence of a formation. It doesn't matter who sets up the formation." Qing Xian smiled bitterly. "Of course I know. That's why that bastard told me to use the wormhole throat to set up the array. Even if we have to destroy the road of no return, we have to make sure these people stay here forever." Shi's eyes widened. "Oh my God, you're tricking your friend after tricking your enemy. Tell me, among the 3 parties present, including us, did this bastard let anyone go? It's a good idea and I don't care about it, but what about Phoenix? The path of no return was very important to them. Would he agree to this?" Qing Xian's eyes glinted fiercely. "Do you still care about these little bottles and jars at home at this time? Shi, you're in charge of preparing the formation. Make it as ferocious as possible. You only have one goal, which is to surround these old cultivators and not let them escape. Moreover, it's best if you can use the power of the formation to separate them so that we can take them down one by one. Don't bother about the path of no return. Just destroy it. I'll talk to Phoenix. You have to be aware that our time is limited. We might only have 15 minutes. Don't be too slow." Madame Light 11 was silent. This young demon called Qing Xian had rudely suggested to her to destroy the wormhole of the path of no return. He even said that it was his own idea. However, she knew that the bastard's involvement in this matter was unavoidable. Qing Xian was very good at persuading people to fall into a trap. This was an ability that he had honed from working with Lu Xiaoyi for a long time. There's no free lunch in this world, not to mention the opportunity to become an immortal, which immortal didn't give up a lot and fight for it himself. You can't lose your home, you can't lose your friends, your orthodoxy must be safe and sound, and your people must be reunited. If you think this way, then you'll never become an immortal. You can only gain something if you lose something. In a sense, the more you lose, the more you gain. Compared to the traces left by the glutton immortal in the heavenly axiom, what's a phoenix nest? Even if there are 10 phoenix nests, you can just throw them away when you need to. When you look back on the day you succeed, it's just a special space. What's the big deal? Qing Xian was tongue-tied. He was very clear that if he wanted to borrow the natural energy of the path of no return, he had to get the approval of the phoenixes. Such a huge formation, such a huge wormhole, even if it was a celestial phenomenon, it wasn't something that a single person could fully control. In this aspect, the phoenixes were the most familiar with it. Alright, we won't do that. Everyone will fight and retreat. It seems that it's not impossible to retreat safely? But what about the pride of the phoenixes? What about their traditions? What about their uncompromising spirit? After you retreat, you'll be safe? You'll be fine? You've already made a big mistake. A few old half-immortals were killed. This means that if you want to protect the wormhole the next time the Great Tao collapses, you'll still have to face an even more unfriendly predicament. There are still 19 Great Taos. You'll have to endure 19 more times? Because of this grudge, the phoenix nest will be harassed. There are too few phoenixes, and they're all settled in one place. You've also seen their power. They can easily gather dozens of peak half-immortals. How can you stop them? Can you still sleep? The phoenix nest is no longer safe. Instead of being reluctant to go, why not take the initiative to give up? From now on, you'll be free. With the traces of the glutton immortal in the book, you'll have free space to soar. When the era changes, you won't make a sound for 10,000 years, but you'll amaze the world with a single feat. It's better than staying here and worrying about this and that. You won't be able to calm your heart, you won't be able to achieve your goals, and you won't be able to control yourself. This state is more suitable for the journey of one's heart before ascending to immortality. The universe is about to shatter. The era is about to restart. What's there to be reluctant to leave with your little belongings? The sooner you throw them away, the easier it will be. If you throw them away too late, you won't even be able to pick up the trash. Why bother? The phoenixes were dumbfounded as they listened. Madame 11 let out a long sigh. Ma Bailu? I believe that you're little Yi's friend now. Because you're all equally shameless. To achieve your goals, you'll do anything. Qing Xian's cheeks trembled. I'm actually still lacking compared to him. He taught me to say these words. My nature is actually not bad. Aunt 11 did not beat around the bush. She had always been a straightforward person. She knew that no matter how one looked at it, now was not the time to put on airs as the king of beasts. These old cultivators were probably no longer respectful to the phoenixes because of the seeds of immortals. However, even if there were no immortals causing trouble, how many people would still follow the rules in the chaos? Respect traditions? Not to mention humans, even the immemorial beasts were not convinced. They felt that they could replace them. They should not cling to traditions, including this ice crystal world. She sighed deeply in her heart. Actually, she should have thought of this earlier. Even Li Wuya destroyed everything wherever he went. Everywhere he went, he left a mess. They were all the same. Chapter 2141. The fourth old cultivator to fight was Taoist Ma Jun, who was at the peak of 5 decay, and was a famous exterior expert. Among the 31 old cultivators, Some of them had high realms and powerful strength. The strength here referred to combat effectiveness. In fact, many major cultivators weren't good at fighting. Cultivation was a diverse profession. There were all kinds of basic fighting abilities, but some specialized in fighting. These people included Ma Zhen, Xian Zhen, Bai Leizhong, Yu, and Lin Han. They were also the hosts of the Road of No Return. 3 of them had been killed. If one more was killed, the Phoenix would be qualified to collect a fragment. It didn't matter. The point was that it would be a big loss of face. Therefore, instead of drawing lots, Taoist Ma Zhen, who was unique in physical strength, would come forward to solve the problem. He was also recognized as the first among all the old cultivators present. He would make a detailed judgment of the Phoenix's ability to decide whether to continue the challenge or stop here. Some of the remaining old cultivators had already expressed their dissatisfaction with their arrangement. The 31 of them had an absolute advantage, but they were abused in the process. Taoist Ma Zhen walked with his hands behind his back. He was not a body cultivator, but a body cultivator of orthodox Taoism. It was a completely different concept. Therefore, his body was not like a body cultivator with supernatural knowing, but an alternative extreme of Tao state. He had once fought with a primordial beast without being hurt. He was very famous in the exterior realm. When passing through the throat, he could feel the remnant of the Buddhist world. Obviously, Qianzong was not careless at that time. The Buddhist world attacked first. Even so, he was still killed by the Phoenix's claws. This Phoenix's strength was terrifying. When passing by the Phoenix, he nodded slightly to show his respect. A strong man like him respected any strong man. This was different from a life-and-death battle. When passing through the throat, he scanned the environment with his divine sense. He still felt that the physical strength here was stronger than the strength of Tao state, especially for a special body cultivator like him who integrated the strength of Tao state into his body. He didn't think it would be easy to pass. The Phoenix had to pay the price for killing 3 people, even if he was not familiar with the 3 old cultivators. He was at the peak of the blight state, and his strong self-confidence was not something that could be easily affected by something deep in his soul. As an orthodox Taoist who leaned towards body cultivation, he had always had a good impression of creatures like the Phoenix. Now, his impression was getting weaker and weaker. Many people had changed as the era's change approached. He was just one of them. He stood in front of his throat and reached his hand into his ring. An extremely rare long spear among high-level cultivators appeared in his hand. The material used was special. What was even more special was that he had decades of experience on the battlefield when he was a mortal. Those who were familiar with him knew that every time he took out this long spear, it meant that he really wanted to kill. Phoenix, bird ears. His name shook the 9 heavens, but in the eyes of true experts, he was nothing special. His left hand held the collar, and his right hand dragged the spear as he walked. This was his favorite posture when he was a mortal. It was because he had accumulated momentum and was sharp, and because he was handsome enough. His bones cracked, and every step he took caused a loud bang to ring out. His Tao realm of strength rose steadily under his control, and as he approached at a steady pace, it gave off a feeling of endless pressure. Usually, under such circumstances, his opponent would use their Tao realm to resist him, and he would gain a psychological advantage in close-range combat. No matter what he did, he would gain the upper hand as soon as he made a move. This was the mystery of the orthodox Taoist body arts. However, the Phoenix opposite him did not move at all. It only stared at him with a pair of cold phoenix eyes, and the rhythm of its flapping wings was not disturbed at all. There were only 2 possibilities. It was scared silly, or it was not afraid of close-range combat. How could a ferocious bird that could kill 3 people in a short time be scared silly? There was only one result. It also looked forward to a close-range combat. Ma Zhen was very excited. In the exterior realm, there were less than 5 people who dared to fight him in close-range combat. He hoped that this one would not disappoint him. Completely following the habits of a mortal, he exhaled and jumped up. The long spear in his right hand drilled out like a poisonous dragon. With the help of his Tao realm of strength, even a meteorite would be pierced by him. The extreme simplicity had the extreme effect. The phoenix flapped its wings and flicked its claws. The sharp cold light of a foot long was clear. With one claw holding the long spear, its body leaned forward, and the other claw was already diagonally slashing down. The timing, strength, judgment, and reaction were all perfect. The claw and spear collided, and sparks flew everywhere. The huge impact was like a muffled thunder. The entire wall of the throat rippled and spread outwards. Therefore, the people outside knew that this was an evenly matched battle. In the arena, it was not an evenly matched battle. Ma Zhen stood with his spear, dumbfounded. Because the phoenix opposite him had lost its feathers, claws, nose, and eyes. This was not a phoenix at all. It was a fake. Lu Xiaoyi was also helpless. It was too difficult for him to not reveal his identity in front of these old cultivators who had lived for tens of thousands of years. His strength was above these old cultivators, but this did not mean that he could play the role of a phoenix. He was far from the level of a cat playing with a mouse. When the two forces collided, his true form was immediately revealed. In the previous 3 battles, he could still use the environment to launch a sneak attack. For example, the monk of the hidden sect used the world of Buddhism. However, for him who had been honed in the dreamland for a long time, it was not difficult to escape the enchantment in an instant. His unique cerebral cortex protected him, allowing him to advance and retreat freely in any dreamland. Therefore, the hidden sect thought that he was in the world of Buddhism, but in fact, he had already sneaked out to launch a sneak attack. The more the opponent wanted to use tricks, the more miserable they would be in front of him. However, in the hands of a strong and confident person like Ma Zhen, how could his mediocre shape-shifting technique withstand such a shock? He was not injured, but his shape-shifting technique was broken. Now, he was just a bird-man covered in bird feathers. Who are you? Hiding your head and tail. Do you know that your actions will bring endless disaster to the phoenix race? Ma Zhen stared at him. A young Taoist came out of the bird feathers, stretched his body, and carefully kept the bird feathers. He did not rush to attack, because he felt the hidden sharpness in this person's body that was full of loopholes. It was not until this person pulled out a sword and waved it frivolously that he realized. Lu Xing? What is the meaning of this? The exterior heavens will plate is too tiring for me, right? Or do you have other intentions? Lu Xiaoyi pointed his sword at him. You and I have no enmity between us. This battle of life and death is for the sake of Tao. It has nothing to do with the eye of heaven, it's just my own selfish intention. Ma Zhen's eyes were cold, and he raised his long spear. I want to know why? If there is no reason, I will not fight to the death with you. Instead, I will return to the outside world and expose your true face. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. You can't go back. When I, Lu Xiaoyi, am holding a sword, even the King of Heaven cannot pass. However, I will tell you the reason, because you are a worthy opponent. Chapter 2142. In fact, Lu Xiaoyi felt sorry for these old guys. It was not easy for them to spend tens of thousands of years, but in the end it was all for others. However, it did not mean that he would be soft-hearted. The means of immortals before their deaths were not something he could deal with. In this aspect, he already had a lot of experience. The previous 3 people only showed up when the Tao disappearing celestial phenomenon occurred. In other words, it was bound to life and death and would not show up until the last moment of their lives. This was the hidden in the deepest part of one's soul. It was something that even the cultivators themselves might not be able to feel. He was an outsider. How could others trust him and reveal their most precious and secret spiritual secrets to others? However, he respected every cultivator who could still maintain their greatest self and face the enemy with a spear even if they were invaded by a mysterious force. This was a warrior. Some immortals have fallen, and their remnant souls have used various means to descend to the mortal world. Do you know? Ma Jin narrowed his eyes. I know. What do you mean? Lu Xiaoyi shook his sleeves. In the sword light, 3 dim lights were fighting left and right, but they could not come out. I've killed 3 people and obtained these 3 items. If I kill you as well, it will be 4. He did not say much and did not explain much. He just let Ma Jin see for himself. Ma Jin stared at the 3 bright lights. He went from being calm to being suspicious, from being calm to trembling all over. Despite his tens of thousands of years of mental accumulation and the ups and downs of the sea of cultivation, he suddenly knew that he was invaded by immortals from the upper world. It was the anger of 10,000 years of hard work being stolen. It was the despair of his hard work being tarnished. The 3 half-immortals were like this, but it did not mean that he was the same. This was the self-deception of a coward. This was the going with the flow of a coward. But this was not him, the most fearless great Tao spear of the exterior. He closed his eyes and let the past pass through his mind. He recalled the changes he had taken for granted in the last 2,000 years. He suddenly realized that he had unknowingly deviated from his course, and he actually thought that all this was a normal response to conform to the general trend. Needless to say, he already understood what had happened to him. In just a few breaths, the hand holding the spear became firm again. His gaze became sharp again as he stared at Lu Xiaoyi. You didn't give the 3 of them a chance. Lu Xiaoyi met his piercing gaze. They don't deserve it, Ma Jin said bluntly, because the glutton immortal is also beneficial to you. The more you dig, the deeper the mark. Lu Xiaoyi said matter-of-factly, in our cultivation, survival of the fittest is the law of the jungle. I can't think of a reason not to do so. Ma Jin shook his spear and said, for me, even if I'm invaded by an immortal, it's just a part of his consciousness. He may or may not be able to influence me. I am still me. You won't discard what you once had, but will instead be of great help in becoming an immortal? Lu Xiaoyi nodded. Exactly. This was the brilliance of the immortals' invasion. They did not seek to devour you, but rather they wanted you to devour them. You're still you. On the contrary, you benefited a lot because you had the experience of becoming an immortal. Ma Jin sneered and pointed his spear at him. If I kill you, no one will know all this? Lu Xiaoyi laughed. In the cultivation world, have you ever heard of a secret being kept because of a person's death? Moreover, I'm really disappointed in the previous 3. Only an opponent like you can give me the pleasure of fighting. I've seen your spear, but I'm afraid you haven't seen my sword? Ma Jin asked again. That mysterious point will only appear when the Tao disappears from the sky. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. Yes, so I'm sorry. The only way I can help you force it out is to kill you. Ma Jin murmured, no wonder I couldn't find it anywhere. Spirituality can only be understood after becoming an immortal. And before that, the most difficult thing for a cultivator to understand is their own spirituality. Lu Xiaoyi looked at him quietly, knowing that he was in a dilemma. The more such a person was, the more he would not allow himself to have any flaws. His pursuit of self and his independent personality had reached a perverted level. He had thought that such a person should only exist in the interior heaven, but now it seemed that this idea was a bit narrow-minded. There were also true heroes in the exterior heaven. Ma Jin stared at him. Can I believe you? Lu Xiaoyi shrugged. To be honest, sometimes I don't even believe in myself. Majin shook his spear, which flew up and then fell down like lightning. It pierced through the top of his head and went straight in. At the same time, he waved his hands and attacked the void. That was his past and future. It was actually very troublesome for a half-immortal cultivator to commit suicide, because he had to cut off his past, present, and future at the same time. Not every cultivator could be so ruthless. However, Majin's movements were as smooth as flowing water, without any hesitation. Not far from him, a Tao disappearing celestial phenomenon appeared. Lu Xiaoyi's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. With a flash of his flying sword, he had already picked up the ball of light. On the other side, Majin's body, which was pierced by the spear, suddenly shook. The spear emitted a dazzling light and disappeared at the same time. His body returned to normal. After the Tao disappearing celestial phenomenon appeared outside for a moment, it returned as if it had never happened. All of this happened in an instant. Majin chuckled. Taoist body tempering techniques are always full of new tricks. Everything can be fake, including Tao disappearing celestial phenomenon. The divine sense attached to my body refining technique is very weak and useless in battle. But I didn't expect that after practicing it for tens of thousands of years, I could finally restore myself with it. Lu Xiaoyi handed over the ball of light wrapped by the flying sword, but Majin did not take it. Don't tempt me with this. What if one day I fail to become an immortal and think of it? Then he looked at Lu Xiaoyi. You seem to know what I'm going to do? Lu Xiaoyi smiled. Man is the spirit of all things. If there's something that can be controlled, there must be something that can't be controlled. It's like a stone in a latrine pit. In my opinion, it's not too much to have such a stone among the 31 stones, right? Majin listened to Lu Xiaoyi's flattery very well. He had to admit that his flattery skills were very good. But if I didn't come this time, you might not have time to identify which stone is stinky and hard? Lu Xiaoyi agreed. Yes, no time, I can only kill it. It won't take much effort. Majin was speechless at this junior's shameless boasting. In this junior's eyes, he was actually a dispensable character? Now is not the time. When you have a chance to go to the exterior, come find me and show me how you can be so effortless. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. You have the right to not believe me, and I also have the right to boast. Is there a problem? Chapter 2143. From beginning to end, Majin did not say a word of thanks because he knew that this was something that could not be solved with words. For an old but firm man like him, he could only bury his feelings in his heart. Everything was a gamble on this swordsman's temperament, a gamble on the truth of what he had seen and heard in the exterior realm, a gamble on the orthodoxy of the sword vein, a gamble on the magnanimity of the successor of Li Wuya. The moment he committed suicide, he handed his life over to this strange swordsman. If he had the slightest intention, he would be doomed eternally. Cultivators valued planning and feelings even more. He felt that this was the right thing to do, so he did it. Fortunately, he felt that he did not let him down. Lu Xiaoyi was very curious. In your circle, how many people like you can still hold on to their basic principles? I feel that you have doubts, but you seem to be avoiding them? Majin corrected him. It's not that I'm avoiding them. In this circle, following the crowd is also a kind of hidden strength. Through the communication between them, a cognitive convergence was formed. When you are in the circle, you will unknowingly follow the crowd without realizing it. It's a kind of mental coercion. So you saw that among the 31 people this time, they were all planted with mysteries by the immortals. This is because normal people will feel strange and unnatural when they are in the circle. Their actions are old-fashioned and dull. I think that after the immortals planted the mysteries, These cultivators have a subconscious sense of community. They reject outsiders and everything that does not belong to their circle. Of course, this is all my speculation. Before I remove that thing, my soul will be blinded and I can't think so clearly. Ma Jin sighed. I'm lucky. My body technique is special. After the Tao disappears, I have a chance to be reborn with a fake body in the present world. And you. But my body technique is unique in the exterior realm. I don't know how to help them. Or will I destroy them like you did? Lu Xiaoyi looked at him. Then you think that they should be allowed to bloom everywhere? And then, after the change of era, return to the lifeless immortal court? No innovation, no change. Although the person had changed, the essence had not. Moreover, from what you see now, the immortals' invasion of the cultivators of the lower realm is silent, as if nothing matters and everything is based on the consciousness of the main body. Then, what makes you think that they will always be like this? With the means of immortals, it was almost inevitable that they would gradually revert to their original form after they became immortals. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. Ma Jin remained silent. Actually, as a peak half-immortal, he had much more time to think about the future than a monstrous genius like Lu Xiaoyi. No one wanted to wait passively, everyone wanted to take the initiative to seize the opportunity. The fundamental question is, are you willing to return to the rhythm of the past, or do you want to contribute to the new era? Those newcomers, the so-called freaks, very few of them don't work hard in the direction of the new Great Tao. But what about old cultivators like you? Ma Jin had a different opinion. We are also working hard on the new path. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come here to fight for the fragments. Lu Xiaoyi shook his head. But your efforts are destined to be futile. It's because there are other things in your bodies. You can't see it now, but what if at the moment when you become an immortal, you think that what the immortals planted will be formed according to your new Great Tao? Or is it something he has more confidence in, something more ancient? Ma Jin was speechless. Lu Xiaoyi's words hit the nail on the head. These mysterious cultivators who were planted by the immortals would definitely walk the old path of the immortals when they became immortals. It's a pity for them. But I can't find a solution. I can only solve it with the grievances of the cultivators in the main world. Time is running out. You need to make a decision. Do you want to work with me? Or do you want to stay out of this? Ma Jin gave him a sideways glance. Can I stay out of this? Lu Xiaoyi told him the truth. No. I don't help you to show my noble character and unquestionable integrity. There are too many of you. I'm afraid that we can't deal with all of you. I'll help you to recognize yourself, and you help me to solve this matter. Then we're even, and we don't owe each other anything. Ma Jin sighed in his heart. He couldn't stay out of this matter and ignore it. For a traitor, the only way to survive was to eliminate his original companions. If he didn't do it now, these people would do something to him in the future. They didn't have a deep friendship in the first place. It was just a kind of potential combination of interests. The key was that in this turmoil that involved all levels of the universe, he couldn't stay out of it. He had to find his own place. The only good news was that these mysterious cultivators planted by the immortals were all planted after the immortals died. It seemed that he didn't need to worry about the revenge of the immortals. It's two different things. I don't accept other people's threats, but I won't avoid my own responsibility. If I do it, there's only one reason I think I should do it. What's your plan? Ma Jin was indeed the most outstanding person in this group of old cultivators. From the fact that he could immediately choose to commit suicide to solve his own problem, he was not an indecisive person. Lu Xiaoyi wouldn't waste precious time on persuading a hesitant person. In his plan, he tried to find as many friends as he could to find common interests. However, he couldn't establish contact with the backup plan set up by the immortals because they were still in a deep sleep. Since he couldn't influence them and couldn't be sure, he could only treat them as opponent. He couldn't afford to be overcautious and have any fantasies. No plan. We didn't come here with any purpose. We just found out and came up with an idea. Now, there are 9 of us, including you. You're familiar with their background, so I want to hear your opinion. Ma Zhen was speechless. This swordsman was really crazy. How could he come up with an idea on the spur of the moment when there were more than 30 of the most powerful old cultivators in the origin world? But now that he was tied to the pirate ship, he had no choice but to do his best. As a cultivator with a strong personality and strong autonomy, he hated others invading his body. He didn't hesitate to put himself on the opposite side of these immortals. In the mortal world, cultivators had been struggling for a long time to reach the supreme realm. Whether it was in the interior realm or the exterior realm, cultivators with resentment could be found everywhere. Cultivators with a personality like his had been exhausted by the endless Dharma conferences of the exterior realm and all kinds of unifying ideas. It was completely beyond the concept of cultivation. Yet, he still had to do it. If he didn't do it, there wouldn't even be a theoretical possibility. An individual was weak and couldn't resist such an environment. However, in a special period when the universe was in chaos and the era was changing, it was hard to say. Which cultivator didn't have ambition? Without ambition, it was impossible to reach here. There were strong and weak rebellious consciousness, but it wasn't just in the sword vein. It was universal. Ma Zhen wasn't an isolated phenomenon. In the cultivation world, there were many people like him who didn't show their strength but took advantage of the situation when the wind blew. This was the fundamental reason why Lu Xiaoyi was so confident in his goal. The wind blew. Every single seed wanted to sway and sway. Chapter 2144. There was nothing. It was completely based on feelings. Even if Ma Zhen's appearance was coincidental, it was inevitable. Even if there was no Ma Zhen, there was still Lang Ban. There would always be such people, true cultivators with firm wills who did things their own way. Even if there were fewer of them than the ancient times, there would definitely be some. There would always be people of the same trade. He firmly believed in this. Ma Zhen's expression was pained. The old man just turned traitor and you dug such a big hole for me. I think it's safer for me to stand on old Xiu's side. Lu Xiaoyi did not hold back. You can't stand back. Once you remove the intrusion, you will no longer be regarded as one of us in this circle. You used to be one of us, but now you are an outsider. The behavior of humans is that they are crueler to traitors than to their enemies. They are more unscrupulous. Ma Zhen scolded. You don't have to provoke me. I was willing to escape. It's true that old Xiu is a pirate ship, but your ship is not necessarily safe. 9 people against 27. What can I do? If the old man had such a method, he would have long been an immortal. Why don't you take one-on-one and leave the rest to me? This old man was speaking in a fit of anger. They had not known each other for long, but his temper was quite big. Lu Xiaoyi felt that he had provoked enough, so he decided to do something practical. Senior, it's not that there is no chance at all. Everything depends on effort. There are 3 points you have to pay attention to. If you do it well, we might succeed. First, no matter what method you use, you have to belittle me as much as possible. Describe the previous 3 kills as an accident. Encourage them to continue challenging me. I will also try my best to cooperate with you. I will not kill them all, but have a choice. Release 3 or 4, then kill 1 or 2. In this way, the situation between us and the enemy will change greatly. Second, after you go out, think of a way to contact the 3 half-immortal freaks. They should want to use the natural environment of the road of no return to set up a trap. As for how to cooperate, you can figure it out yourselves. Finally, you are a traitor. Do you know what a traitor is? Can you be more professional? Why don't you use those methods of sowing discord and sowing discord? The background of the remaining old guys, their fatal weaknesses, and so on, are all depending on you to inform them. Ma Zhen's eyes widened. I can't do this. Go find someone else. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. It was hard to say whether this person's personality was good or bad, but he couldn't force it. Seeing that the time was approaching, he could only say, "You should get out. We have to give them good news and give them the confidence to persevere." Ma Zhen turned around and left. He faintly said, "I'm not sure. However, if there were anyone left who could persevere like me, it would probably be Xianzhen and Bai Leizhong. However, I'm not sure if the two of them can force out the invasion by faking their deaths like I did. You'll have to figure it out yourself." Lu Xiaoyi watched him leave. He did not have much hope in his heart. Ma Zhen's accident was an accident. There was no way he could do anything about it. He could understand their feelings, their anger at the immortals' actions, the unfairness of the situation of old cultivators like themselves, and so on and so forth. Therefore, he wanted to pull this group of people into a confrontation to prevent more old cultivators from falling into the trap. The idea was good, but it was a little naive. If the immortals could invade silently the first time when they died, they could definitely do it a second time. The key was that until now, they were completely clueless about the mechanism of the immortals' invasion. If they couldn't solve the problem from the root, what else could they do? Ma Zhen could bring out the immortal seed by faking his death. What about the others? Not everyone had such a special body technique. Once the immortal seed disappeared, they would really die. There was no turning back. He wouldn't put his focus on rescuing one more person. Ma Zhen was able to walk out not because of Lu Xiaoyi, but because of Ma Zhen's own decision. After a short pause, the challenge began again. Ma Zhen's success could prove something, but it also couldn't. Lu Xiaoyi could feel the hesitation, caution, and cautiousness of these old cultivators who were challenging the challenge again. Of course, they also understood that if he continued to be ruthless and still couldn't kill two, it would inevitably arouse the suspicion of the old cultivators again. There would be no turning back. The whole thing started because of him. It was his decision to kill ruthlessly, to give up the road of no return, and to drag Phoenix and his buddies into the dangerous whirlpool. Cultivators with the goal of cultivation shouldn't reject life and death. This was their fate. But as a friend, he hoped to do more. 9 people against 20 people. If he wasn't careful, someone would die. No matter who died, he would feel guilty. Before the last moment, he should protect his friends more thoroughly. Therefore, he needed to change his strategy and boil the frog in warm water. After Ma Zhen successfully passed the challenge, the old cultivators used Phoenix as a benchmark to eliminate the immortals. Suddenly it became normal. She counted on the side. 1 passed, 1 didn't pass, but 2 didn't die. 1 died, 2 passed, 1 didn't pass, and 1 died. Cudgel is really unlucky. He was afraid that he would scare the other party if he killed too many people, so now he only killed 1 person for every 4 people who passed. Even if he gave the old guys hope, he wouldn't succeed 4 times in a row. If he could go on like this, Cudgel could probably kill 10 people and instigate 1 to defect. Our situation would become 10 against 20. It seems like we can still fight. Yen Tu was very dissatisfied. Are you satisfied with the last 10 to 1? What's the point of fighting without a challenge? Little E has taken all the training opportunities. Is it comfortable for us to eat ready-made meals? She sighed. Senior sister, I don't want to eat ready-made meals. I just want to eat as much as I can. Qing Xian reminded at the side, why are you talking so much nonsense? Prepare the array. The old guys are not stupid. They have already started to doubt. Yes, the old guys started to doubt after Lu Xiaoyi killed another 3 people. The whole situation was developing in the direction of eliminating the living forces. For these old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years, this was not a good thing. Seeing that the old cultivators were getting more and more hesitant, Qing Xian, who was in charge of the overall arrangement, decided to take the initiative. He had cooperated with Lu Xiaoyi too many times. He knew very well how to deal with the aftermath in the most effective way. Wiping the butt was a technical job. Eyesight was very important. You couldn't wait until his butt was full of feces before wiping it. That would mean a lot of trouble, such as washing the pants, wiping the chair, and even cleaning the floor. If the floor was covered with carpet, it was a test of eyesight. The best way was to wipe it was the moment before his sphincter muscles relaxed. Block it with a wooden plug first, then throw him into the lake. Chapter 2145. My formation is an improved version of the 9 turns intestine returning formation. It suits the characteristics of the wormhole's environment. Since we've decided not to use bottles and jars, we might as well smash it thoroughly. I think this wormhole has been in disrepair for a long time. It won't last long. Let's go all out. The whole thing will collapse. The intestines are divided into 9 turns, separated and not connected to each other. It's beneficial to disperse the opponent's strength. She was a little excited and introduced. The opponent has 24 people. After 9 turns, each intestine will only have 2 or 3. There are 10 of us, basically 1 intestine per person. In other words, everyone will be besieged. The only difference is that there are 2 of them? Or 3 of them. The stronger ones will have to end the battle as soon as possible and open up the connected intestines. The weaker ones can only try their best to hold on. Wait for reinforcements. What do you think? This is already the best arrangement. Yan Cheng was very satisfied. From having to deal with 20 to 30, now we only have to deal with 2 to 3. What else is there to say? The key was speed. The speed of killing. Although they had fewer people, they had 2 advantages. The ferocious bird Lu Xiaobang. Among the 9 intestines, one of them would randomly appear. As long as they could open up the situation in one of the intestines, the rest would be easy. These half-immortal old cultivators had high cultivation, but not all of them were fighters. Do we need to think of a way to inform Xiaobang? She did not forget. Who cares if he dies? We don't have the time. Under Qing Xian's command, Shi, with the help of the phoenixes, suddenly moved. The age of the road of no return was very old. Among the space wonders, it was the most unstable one. This was because it was not a wormhole that had been formed not long ago, but a half-abandoned wormhole. It had been used as an air conditioner pipe. The alternation of cold and heat, the change of speed and pressure, it had not been quiet for a long time. The reason why the phoenixes who were always unwilling to get involved in trouble took the initiative to maintain order was because its fragility had reached a dangerous level, and it could not withstand an overly intense battle scene. Now, since they already had the intention to destroy it, the phoenixes were also the clearest about its weakness. With the cooperation of a professional formation talent like Shi, the results were obvious. 4 phoenixes suddenly flew and hit the intestine wall in 4 directions. A huge change occurred. The entire wormhole, under Shi's conscious destruction of its vital points, collapsed with a loud bang. Following that, the aftermath of the collapse spread throughout the entire wormhole. Under Shi's conscious control, it formed his so-called 9 turns intestine returning array. How could Lu Xiaoyi have known that they would act in advance? He was still waiting for the next challenger in the throat when he felt the walls of the throat twitching. They kept on compressing and stretching, and the spatial energy became chaotic. It was as if the end of the universe had arrived. How could he not understand? Qing Xian, UB***starred, before he could finish cursing, the space around him changed. He didn't know where he was, what kind of formation was this, what effect did it have, and what was its purpose. This bunch of bastards, to think that he was risking his life in the throat to ensure everyone's safety. It must be that bastard Qing Xian who did it. No one else would be jealous of his beautiful bird feathers. No matter what kind of formation it was, there was one principle that did not change, and that was to find the enemy and kill them first. Now that the formation was activated, it was 9 against 24. He was not worried about himself or the phoenixes. He was only worried about his senior sister and the others. He wondered if they could hold on until he rushed over. Friends nowadays could not afford to die. If one died, there would be one less friend, and there would be no way to make up for it. The entire wormhole passage of the road of no return was divided into 9 sections of space, which was called the 9 turns intestine. This was Shi's evil hobby, and it was also the formation method that was most suitable for the current environment. Formations were not that high, profound, or out of print. A real expert's formation was based on the utilization of the surrounding environment. The true essence was to use the power of nature to restrict the power of the living beings of the cultivation world. Shi was an expert. The supreme orthodoxy was one of the best in the Tao of formations, even among the orthodox Taoists. They had a solid foundation. Shi was very sharp. He knew that the core of the problem was not how to use the formation to help them fight, but how to separate the 24 opponents. This was the essence of the problem. Therefore, when the formation was set up in a hurry, it did not consider how to make up for the battle, but to separate them. If the 24 peak half-immortals gathered together, they would break out of the formation in seconds. This must be eliminated. On their side there were 9 people. Therefore, they could only use the 9 turns intestine returning formation. Otherwise, it could be the 10 turns large intestine formation and 6 turns small intestine formation. The core idea of this kind of formation was to rely on the strength of one person to make a breakthrough in a single intestine, and then spread it out. They had such a person. Lu Xiaoyi and Light 11 both possessed such powerful strength. If everyone fought in a group of dozens, it would be difficult for them to display their strength. However, if they were to fight 1 against 2 or 3, it would be a matter of time. Separating and releasing the dogs were the core elements of Shi's 9 turns intestine returning formation. It must be admitted that this was a method that hit the key point. The only problem was that the other people, especially the 3 young monsters, were under a lot of pressure. If they could not wait for reinforcements, it was very likely that they would die in front of the dawn. They did not cower. Instead, they felt that it was natural. Although Lu Tong was very weak in small matters, Dafa was reliable. They also wanted the glutton fairy. Madame Light 11 spread her wings and unleashed a storm of attacks. She was in a race against time. In her group, only she and Lu Xiaoyi had the ability to break out of the encirclement of 2 or 3 peak half-immortals. The 2 of them held the key to victory. It would depend on how quickly they could break out of the encirclement and spread the victory to the other intestines. Of course, the others were not useless. They had to stay alive so that their opponents would not link up and form a chain reaction. In a sense, the situation was the same for both sides. They had the advantage in that they already had a plan, while the old cultivators might still need to explore for a while. She only had one opponent now, and this was what she had encountered. As for how many intestines there were, would it be 2 or 3? This was not what she should be thinking about now. Her only goal was to kill her opponent as soon as possible. She could not hold back at all, even if she was injured in exchange for her opponent's life. Her opponent was a monk at the second severance. He was from the interior heaven. What he saw was a crazy phoenix, as if they could not coexist and could not live under the same sky. Was it necessary? Compared to the change of the epoch, these fragments were much less of a problem. The path of no return was very important, but it did not mean that he would really not be able to obtain a fragment of great Tao if he left this place. There were still chances outside, and there were also many special places where fragments of great Tao could be stored. For someone like him, who had rich experience in the universe, there were still many choices. It was just that the chances here were greater. But no matter how great the chances were, it was not necessary to exchange his life for it, right? Or was it a phoenix that did not have much desire for the fragment? The path of no return this time was different from the past, and full of strangeness. He decided that he could not be weak. He had to make his attitude clear so that this phoenix would not take advantage of him. Chapter 2146. The monk decided to teach the phoenix a lesson, and at the same time, he wanted to test if the bird's craziness was real. Or was it just pretending to scare people? The monk cultivated the ancient technique of the Three Lives Buddha. The Three Lives Buddha was divided into the Three Lives Buddha and the Three Lives Buddha. The Three Lives Buddha, Medicine Buddha of the Eastern Pure Vaidurya Nirbasa, was on the left. Sakyamuni Buddha of the Saha world was in the middle. Amitabha Buddha of the Western Pure Land was on the right. The Three Lives Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha of the present, Dipankara Buddha of the past and Maitreya Buddha of the future. He cultivated the Amitabha Buddha of the Three Lives Buddha. His Buddha realm was the Pure Land. The Pure Land was an ideal world without suffering that Buddhists believed in. It was compared to the mortal world where mortals lived. Because there was only happiness and no suffering, it was named Pure Land. It was also known as the Pure Land. Buddhists believed that time had no beginning and no end, space was boundless, and the Pure Land was endless. In every Pure Land there was a Buddha teaching the mortals. In such a world, there should be no anger, no fighting, and no intensity. The monk displayed his Pure Land here to challenge the phoenix's nirvana. In this Pure Land there was no suffering. Therefore, there was no need to ignite the fire and be reborn. In this place, even if you really achieved nirvana, you might not be able to be reborn. This was the deep-rooted conflict between Buddhism's philosophy and the phoenix's natal divine ability. Now that the monk used his philosophy, it was equivalent to asking if the phoenix could achieve nirvana in the Pure Land. In other words, if you don't have the courage to achieve nirvana, why do you have to be so aggressive? The battle of ideals had nothing to do with the level of cultivation. It was actually a competition of the persistence of the two parties to their respective ideals. The monk had the Buddhism system that had been passed down for millions of years. The phoenix had a long life and incomparable persistence to its own existence. When the two collided, the outcome was unpredictable. Anyone with a bit of rationality would not choose such a reckless and brainless method. Countless techniques and divine abilities were not used, but they were gambling on the most unfathomable ideals. This was the monk's goal. The phoenix would definitely not gamble with nirvana. Then, he could slowly deal with it under the condition of dampening its spirit. He wanted to understand the crazy bird's true intentions. But he was wrong. Madame 11 did not hesitate at all. The moment the ultimate bliss appeared, a dazzling light appeared out of thin air, burning herself and the ultimate bliss. The monk was alarmed. He never expected the other party to be so resolute. "You're crazy!" In the midst of the burning, the fiery red phoenix became even brighter. The red was deep, the red was purple, and its cry was clear and melodious. "If you think that way, then you'll lose for sure." There was nothing wrong with the monk's nirvana, but the problem was his starting point. Therefore, the battle ended as soon as it started. Madame Light 11, whose body was covered in flames, flew towards the next cultivator's aura. 20,000 years. Last time, she didn't even have the chance to burn herself. This time, she would not allow herself to have any regrets. The new era began with the glutton immortal. The horse pillow spear was like the Grim Reaper, and his body was like a swimming dragon. He was a true peak half-immortal, and there were less than 10 people in both the inner and outer scenic skies. He was one of the few great cultivators at the top of the cultivation pyramid in the main world. When he had the intention to kill, his strength was not something that Aunt 11 and Lu Xiaoyi could imagine. When he didn't know the truth, he was cautious and self-disciplined. Once he made a decision, his heart would be as cold as stone and he would be ruthless. In his eyes, there were no longer any colleagues of the exterior or friends of the interior. He was a celestial seed in human skin. Anyone who dared to attack his Majin would have to face his wrath. No matter who it was. He could no longer find trouble with the celestial who attacked him because that person had already passed away. However, there were other celestials. This was not an isolated incident, but an organized crime by the celestial court of the upper world against the cultivators of the lower world. He could be humble, but he would never accept a fate that was arranged by others. People said that the ancient interior cultivators were born with pride and had the demeanor of ancient cultivators. However, the difference between the interior and the exterior was only superficial. It was just that the path they chose was different. In the exterior realm, there were also many true heroes who lived up to the heavens and earth and lived up to their hearts. He would not pretend that this matter had nothing to do with him just because the celestial who attacked him was no longer around. This was not his character. It had been like this for 10,000 years. The universe was in chaos and the era was changing. It was the time for heroes to rise. At this moment, how could he swallow his anger? It was the time for him to show his ambition and use all his skills to dominate the world. He had waited for 10,000 years. Was he waiting for nothing? As soon as he entered, he killed a fourth decay half-celestial who did not realize his betrayal. The small but glaring light in the celestial phenomenon of Tao made him hate him even more. There were 2 more half-celestials in front of him. One of them was one of his few friends in the exterior realm, Xianzhen. However, he was determined. He was willing to give his friend a chance. But now was not the time. He shook his long spear and pounced forward. Qing Xian's luck was not good. He bumped into 2 old half-celestials. One of them was a 5th decay half-sage, Bai Leizhong. He immediately understood that he had lost the chance to kill them. This was because he was not sure if there was a 3rd half-celestial in the intestines. Before the formation was activated, the 3 of them had a serious discussion. They especially emphasized that they shouldn't just be brave. The key to success or failure was to kill as fast as possible for Lu Tong and Maiden 11, but to them, it was how to live longer. They had an agreement. If there was only one opponent, then they could try to kill them. If the opponent was in a group, then they would focus on escaping and defense. Fight for time. This was not weakness. It was if you overestimated yourself. Once you made a mistake, you would not only be the unlucky one, but also the companions in the intestines. Because the target had been killed, they could work together. Companions might be able to handle 2 opponents. But if there were 4 or 5 of them, how could they survive? He was in such a situation now. With his cooperation with Lu Tong, this kind of situation was very common. In the end, Lu Tong was always the one who pretended to be brilliant. He was the one who was unknown and devoted to his work. He didn't care about this. From a certain perspective, being unknown was also a very good way to cultivate. Since he had done something big, others would not notice him. How good would that be? It was like a group of dogs fighting. Secretly giving orders, secretly causing trouble, controlling the rhythm when the dogs were running, and at the same time taking out the dog's butt. Why should he be the one who barks the loudest? It was the same this time. He did not have any unrealistic thoughts. Even if he could not be the one who turned the situation around, He must not be the one who overestimated himself and brought disaster to his companions. This was the way of behavior determined by his personality. What he did not want the most was to drag his companions down. Chapter 2147. Qing Xian began to move vertically. After so many years of contact with a certain person, he finally understood something and had a deeper understanding of speed. It could be said that speed was the life of a cultivator. The swordsman's strength was dependent on his speed. When he understood this with his foundation, even though he could not be like the swordsman in terms of vertically moving, he could still reach a level that most cultivators could not reach with his solid foundation. His emphasis on speed was more on the integration of speed and Tao state. He paid attention to moving freely in complex environments, not just absolute speed. This set of things made him seem to be very handy in the beginning when he encountered the two old demi-immortal cultivators. Perhaps the two old cultivators had not realized the true purpose of the 9 turns intestine returning formation. This was the reason why he had to activate the formation in advance. It was to catch his opponents off guard before they could completely adjust their observation of the year, creating the conditions for a quick kill after entering the formation. As long as he could delay for a moment, with the speed of Liu Cudgel's attack, he could achieve a breakthrough in a certain segment of the intestine. However, this situation could not last long. When they felt the continuous movement of Dao disappearing in the 9 turns intestine returning formation, the two experienced old cultivators immediately understood. They no longer hesitated and began to encircle and annihilate with all their strength. When the sage-to-be started to get serious, Qing Xian was obviously not enough. His current strength was still in the primordial spirit realm. Even though he had taken 2 steps and had made great progress in the void and mystery realm, his weakness in the foundation was exposed. He was seen through by the 2 old cultivators who had lived for 10,000 years and was targeted. He immediately fell into a predicament. It was a complete suppression of strength and cultivation, which made Qing Xian somewhat helpless. The demi-immortal evildoers, whether it was the exterior or the interior, were all praised as gods in the recent universe. It was as if they were the future and other cultivators had to stand aside. They were all green leaves and only the evildoers were the red flowers. This was a false image. It was a fact that there were many rising stars, but to say that they had replaced their seniors was an exaggeration. It was a deliberate exaggeration by some people with ulterior motives. There were many half-immortal cultivators of the older generation. There were no less than tens of thousands of them who were in the exterior heavenly realm. Under such circumstances, it was not strange for evildoers to surpass some half-immortals of the older generation by virtue of their unique circumstances. This was because many of those seniors were just ordinary people. However, if one were to look at the top of the pyramid of this group, each of the sage-to-be and half-sage-to-be that could be pulled out had true strength that ordinary evildoers could not compare to. The 5 soul rings trio could be considered outstanding among the half-immortal monstrous geniuses. They indeed had the strength to maintain their confidence. However, it still depended on who they were compared to. They would have a chance against those 4th elder cultivators, but they wouldn't have a chance against 5th elder cultivators and 2nd severance quasi-saint. It was just that simple. Not everyone can be called a shit-stirrer. The 3 of them were unfortunate because this battle was destined to be a torture. However, they were also lucky because the sage-to-be, who had the most powerful combat power among this group of old cultivators, had been pulled over by Lu Xiaoyi. Otherwise, if Ma Zhen were to attack, with his straightforward and aggressive characteristics, none of the 3 of them would be able to withstand him. How could a spear wielder who could destroy Lu Xiaoyi's disguise be easy to deal with? Due to the strangeness of Qing Xian's escape method and the miraculous Yin-Yang Dao realm, their cooperation was as smooth as fish. Under the leadership of Bai Leizhong, the two half-immortal old cultivators squeezed with half of the auspicious cloud and finally controlled Qing Xian to an extremely small space. This was an alternative use of the auspicious cloud. It fully demonstrated the sage-to-be's profound foundation in the use of Tao. Under the auspicious cloud, there was no escape and no escape. This was the weakness of the gap between the realms. What Qing Xian lacked was the cultivation of his primordial spirit. His weakness was grasped by himself, and there was no hope for him to turn the tables. They were both half-immortals. Was it better for the yang spirit to take one step? Or was it better for the primordial spirit to take two steps? Everyone had their reasons, and every woman had her reasons. However, from the direction of the development of the cultivation world, the yang spirit taking one step was more stable and more beneficial to the balanced development of the cultivators. Therefore, it was the mainstream. Including Lu Xiaoyi, everyone took this path. There were very few historical records of the primordial spirit taking two-step. It was a special phenomenon. In layman's terms, it was biased. He was good at comprehending Tao, but he was lacking in the foundation. This was the most depressing thing for Qing Xian. This was because he did not have such a cultivation path. In the end, he and the guy in the bamboo hat became brothers in suffering. His cultivation was limited. Due to the limit of the primordial spirit, he could not condense the auspicious cloud. He could only be squeezed and pushed, and the range of his movement was getting smaller and smaller. When it was small to a certain extent, there was not enough room to maneuver, and he would face real danger. This was the ultimate goal of this method. He knew it, but he could not resist. However, when Bai Leizhong's auspicious cloud was squeezed to a certain extent, he found it difficult to continue. After a brief identification, he was shocked. In the state of being squeezed, a new Tao state appeared. It could weaken the power of the auspicious cloud to a certain extent. Although it could not eliminate it completely, it could greatly delay the pressure of the auspicious cloud. The extraordinary thing about this Tao state was that it could actually attract the power of the heavenly Tao to a limited extent. It was like the heavens sending the heavens to invade the auspicious cloud. Bai Leizhong was puzzled. What is this Tao state called? It's so strange. Now you can borrow the power of the heavens to destroy the auspicious cloud. If this Tao state really becomes the innate Tao one day, won't it be able to kill immortals? Qing Xian said slowly. Where is Senior's home? Which orthodoxy? Bai Leizhong laughed. Why should I tell you? So that when you know, you can use the power of the three pure ones to take revenge? Qing Xian nodded. That makes sense. Then why should I tell you? So that you can study it carefully and take it for yourself? Bai Leizhong sneered. You have a sharp tongue. Disrespecting your seniors is the common problem of you so-called evildoers. I also don't need you to tell me. As long as you continue to use it, I will naturally know. Qing Xian was disdainful. To be able to make stealing a master sound so dignified, I have never seen a second person in the cultivation world. Senior has really refreshed my understanding of the lower limit. Bai Leizhong was indifferent. You have never seen a second person like me in the cultivation world. It's only because you haven't lived long enough. If you can live to my age, I feel that your lower limit can still be broken. Qing Xian ignored him and focused all his attention on displaying the state of Tao in order to stall for time. His attack methods had a hard time succeeding in front of 2 4th and 5th Blight cultivators' auspicious clouds. That was not something that could be solved with techniques, but with deep cultivation. The other 4th Blight cultivator's mind was very clear as he reminded, Old Bai. This brat might also be using this kind of strange Tao state to stall for time. Bai Leizhong laughed. I know, don't worry. I know the severity of the matter. It was not that he did not know this evildoer's goal, but he really thought highly of this new Tao state. It had the potential to become a new innate Tao. This was very important, even more important than those Tao shards. He was also not worried that an accident would happen because his perception of this space was very sharp. Before the opponent's support came, he had the confidence to end everything. Chapter 2148. Like Qing Xian, Shi's luck was not too good. He did not meet a single old cultivator, but a pair. Soon there were 3 of them. "I'm so unlucky." Shi immediately went into a defensive state. His speed was not good enough, so he did not put in any effort. Under the cat and mouse game of the 3, he was soon confined to one place. However, he had a strong point, which was that he was skilled in formations, especially when he was the one who set up the 9 turns intestine returning formation. He was the master of the formation, so he had the advantage of being the master of the formation. He had the energy of the whole intestine formation as support. Therefore, he set up a small formation for himself, intestine refining as silk, intestine melting as powder. He used his own cultivation as a lever to leverage the energy of the whole wormhole for his own use. He could not die. If he died, the 9 turns intestine returning formation would be broken. Everyone had their own position. Whether one was a good teammate depended on whether one understood what one should do to be good for everyone. The 3 of them were able to gather together because everyone knew their own division of labor and did what they were best at. That Lu Tong was responsible for drawing hatred for everyone. Of course, he also drew the hope of the Great Way. His purpose was to stay here and waste time. His luck was that although his opponents were 3 cultivators, there was no one like Ma Zhen or Bai Leizhong among them. This gave him a chance to defend himself. He was doing his best here, but he was thinking about his 2 companions. He hoped that these 2 fellows would not be as unlucky as him. He had the formation to rely on, but they did not, especially that hot-tempered senior apprentice sister. Yen Chong was making the most reckless attack in her life because she only had one opponent now, and they had not gathered together. She was not Qing Xian, so she did not have the profound life-saving methods of Taoism and the novel Tao state. She was also not Shi, who could rely on the formation to borrow power. She could only rely on her sword. A sword that only attacked and did not defend. No matter if it was one opponent or 2 or 3, she only had one method: attack. In her several lifetimes of cultivation, she only knew this one move. In the previous expedition to Sirius, she lost her Tao because of this, but she did not change her original intention. It was not that she was brainless and did not know how to be flexible. Swordsman's philosophy was to seek her own safety in the attack, which was not the same as Dharma Meridian. The fiercer she attacked, the greater the threat she posed to the enemy, and the longer she could live. Her immersion in the swordsmanship system was divided into several stages. In the beginning, her external sword was rather mediocre. Among the swordsmen in the dome, her strength was only slightly above average. There were many who were stronger than her. However, after she became a Yin master, her abilities had improved tremendously. It was as if she was born to fight with an inner sword. A qualitative change appeared when she took a step forward. She had awakened the memories of her past life, which were thousands of years of research and study of internal sword technique. The Killing Sword sect, in particular, was her foundation. The current her was no longer someone she could compare to in the past. Her achievements in swordsmanship had long surpassed those of the Yang God sword cultivators through the accumulation of reincarnation. Right now, her position in the dome was not just based on her qualifications, but her actual ability. Combined with her reincarnation Tao realm, in the supreme inheritance of Xuanyuan's swordsmanship, she had a unique advantage in the reincarnation god slaying technique and 3 lifetimes 3 cut. Even Lu Xiaoyi was slightly inferior to her in this aspect. It was because of this that she dared to attack. Just like the monk she was facing now. In the short span of 10 breaths, the two of them had exchanged life and death 6 times. She had done it twice, and the monk had done it 4 times. Under the frenzied attacks, the monk lost his courage and no longer dared to continue exchanging blows, even though he was clearly superior in terms of cultivation realm. In the end, it became a chase and a chase. However, what was the point of escaping in front of a swordsman, and in an enclosed space? As the monk fled, his Buddha image kept appearing. Every time it appeared, it would be destroyed by the sword radiance behind it. That crazy woman's reincarnation sword Dao was strange. Normal reincarnation Dao realm had reincarnation and cycles. Forming a cycle was the correct solution. However, this woman's reincarnation sword Dao only had reincarnation and no cycles. When it's your turn to die, you won't be able to come back. This was clearly a deep change to the existing reincarnation Dao. Buddhism's understanding of reincarnation was not inferior to Taoism's, but he could not adapt to this crazy woman's reincarnation sword Dao. This was also one of the main reasons why he was being beaten up so badly. He could not block such a flying sword in the Dao realm. He was in a very sorry state as he fled. However, between turning back and seeking help from his companions, he chose the latter. If there was hope for a safe victory, who would be willing to exchange their lives for it? After many times of being unable to bear it, there was finally a turning point. 2 auras were rapidly approaching in front of him. This was the good news he had been waiting for. He charged straight towards his companions and called out with his divine sense. The sword Vain Tigress is a man-eater. 2 brothers, please hold back. This group of old cultivators was actually not familiar with each other. At their level, they were basically all giants who ruled over a region. The opportunities for them to interact in private were very limited, and it was impossible for them to become true friends. It was just that there was an invisible thread that connected them together. However, in this kind of situation, no one would sit and watch as their companions were lost. A mirage pearl was flicked into the sky. Under its brilliance, it illuminated the front yard. Wherever it shrouded, the laws were clearly revealed and traces were left behind. Another evil centipede bared its fangs and brandished its claws, pouncing towards the back of the monk. However, it did not rescue him first, but attacked the enemy first. Of course, it could also be understood as attacking the enemy's location to save him. Behind the monk, the brilliance flourished. Countless sword lights were left behind. Although the traces were obvious, under the huge amount, it was unstoppable. The sword lights completely ignored the light of the mirage pearl and the strange, evil centipede. They continued to pounce towards the monk. At this moment, the monk relaxed the moment he saw his reinforcements. This had harmed him. Or perhaps he was simply exhausted from the continuous attacks and could no longer block the crazily attacking sword lights. This was already the 5th time he had been beheaded. There was no place for him to hide in the past or the future. With a sorrowful cry, he lost his life in the sky. The Tao vanishing heavenly phenomenon appeared next to his 2 companions. There was a faint light that could not be seen. Because there was no place to go and no one to rely on, it could only drill into the body of the half-immortal who was commanding the evil centipede. This caused him to be shocked. He did not know what this thing was. Was it the remnant of his companions' Tao vanishing heavenly phenomenon? Or was it a scheme of the swordsman? Yan Chang no longer had the chance to collect this light. She saw it, but she was too far away to do anything. Under the mirage pearl, the traces of the flying sword were exposed. Under the evil centipede's attack, it was heavily injured. Yan Chang had only achieved half of her goal. She was very vexed. She only needed to put in more effort. However, what she did not know was that among the 3 fifth ring cultivators, she was the only one who had achieved something. The secret in her body circulated, and her body recovered to its original state. Without retreating, she faced the 2 half-immortals and raised the river of sword chi again. Just this momentum, in addition to the previous formation slash, made the 2 half-immortals not dare to underestimate her anymore. They each displayed their divine skills and fought. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.